Rain hammered against bulletproof glass while Seoul burned below like a city built on broken promises. Inside the penthouse of Kang Enterprises, Kang Dojin, youngest mafia boss in Korean history, watched security drag out another beautiful liar. She'd arrived wrapped in Chanel and diamond lies. Hidden in her purse was a recording device paid for by his enemies. Women had become transactions. Every smile calculated, every touch rehearsed. Then a delivery driver walked into his empire and destroyed everything he thought he knew about survival. Her name was Nyla Carter, and loving her would nearly kill them both. If you want to see how a man built from violence learns to feel again, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Because what happens next will break your heart before it puts it back together. Baz. The lobby of Kang Enterprises gleamed like a cathedral built for money. Marble floors reflected recessed lighting. Security guards stood positioned every 20 feet wearing tailored suits and earpieces, armed with enough firepower to start a small war. This was the legitimate face of the Kang Empire, a pharmaceutical and technology conglomerate worth billions, clean, respectable, untouchable. Except everyone in Seoul's underworld knew the truth. Kang Dojin didn't just run a corporation. He controlled every shadow the law couldn't reach. Gambling, arms, information, protection. If it moved through Korea's criminal networks, it moved through him. At 29 years old, he'd inherited the empire from his father 3 years ago and turned it into something more efficient and infinitely more terrifying. His enemies called him the Ice King. His allies called him Sir. Nobody called him soft. He stood now on the 42nd floor behind floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city like a man surveying pieces on a chessboard. Tailored black suit, sharp jawline, dark eyes that gave away nothing, every movement controlled, every expression measured. He'd learned young that showing weakness in his world meant death. His phone buzzed. He didn't look at it. "Sir!" His head of security, Kwon Minho, appeared in the doorway. Built like a tank, scarred knuckles, loyal to the point of violence. "The woman from last night, she's talking to prosecutors." "Handle it." "Already done." "But there's another problem." Dojin turned slowly. Kwon knew better than to interrupt him with minor issues. "Lee Sang-woo's daughter has been calling your office 12 times today." Lee Sang-woo controlled shipping routes through Busan. Powerful ally. His daughter Seo Yuna was Seoul's favorite socialite, beautiful, educated, connected to old money families. She'd been pursuing Dojin for 2 years with the persistence of someone who'd never been told no. "Tell her I'm unavailable." "She's claiming you made promises at the gala last month." Dojin's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "I made no promises. And if she continues spreading lies, remind her father that shipping routes can be disrupted." Kwon nodded and disappeared. This was Dojin's life. Women who wanted his power. Men who feared his reach. An empire built on carefully maintained control where one mistake could cost everything. He'd accepted it long ago. Accepted that real connection was a liability. That trust was a weakness he couldn't afford. Love was something that happened to other people. The intercom on his desk crackled. "Mr. Kang, there's a situation in the lobby." He pressed the button. Define situation. "A delivery driver. She's refusing to leave until someone provides proper identification and chain of custody documentation for a pharmaceutical package." Dojin felt a muscle twitch in his jaw. This building processed hundreds of deliveries daily through a dedicated loading dock. No driver should be in the main lobby, let alone causing a scene. "Security can't remove her?" "Sir, she's citing federal drug transport regulations. Says if we force her to abandon the package without proper protocol, she'll report the violation to the Ministry of Health." Something about the situation felt unusual. Bold drivers didn't last long in Seoul, especially when dealing with powerful corporations. Most people saw Kang Enterprises and did whatever they were told. "I'm coming down." Kwon appeared immediately. "Not advisable, sir. It could be I know what it could be." Dojin's voice carried the kind of quiet authority that ended arguments. "Which is why you'll have 8 men positioned between me and the entrance." 3 minutes later, Dojin stepped out of his private elevator into the lobby. The scene was almost comical. 6 security guards, trained former military, each one capable of extreme violence, stood in a loose semicircle around a young woman wearing an oversized Navy delivery uniform and scuffed work boots. She held a tablet in one hand and a sealed package in the other, her posture radiating exhausted irritation rather than fear. She was black, American, judging by the English phrases mixing into her decent but accented Korean. Maybe mid-20s, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry except a cheap digital watch. Face carrying the particular tiredness of someone working multiple jobs just to survive. And she was lecturing his head of lobby security about proper pharmaceutical transport procedures, like she was the one in charge. Clearly states that Class 2 controlled substances require documented transfer, she was saying, her Korean precise despite obvious frustration. I need a signature from someone with verified authority, not security, not an assistant, someone actually licensed to receive these materials. Miss, You've explained nothing except that I should just leave this package with people who can't provide identification. Do you understand what happens if these medications end up in the wrong place? People die. Companies get shut down. I lose my job. So no, I'm not just leaving it because your boss is too important to follow basic regulations. Dojin felt something unexpected stir in his chest. Amusement, maybe. Or something more dangerous. Interest. He moved forward. The crowd parted instantly. Security straightened. The receptionist behind the desk actually stopped breathing. Everyone recognized him. Everyone knew what his presence meant. Everyone except the delivery driver. She glanced up as he approached, then looked back down at her tablet, apparently unimpressed by the sudden silence that had fallen over the lobby. Are you authorized to receive controlled pharmaceutical materials? She asked, without looking up. Dojin stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into her face. Dark circles under brown eyes, flour dust on one sleeve from some other job, hands that bore the calluses of real work, not manicured softness. I own this building, he said quietly. That's not what I asked. Now she did look up, meeting his gaze with zero recognition, just tired professionalism. Do you have license verification? Somewhere behind him, one of the security guards made a strangled sound. This woman had no idea who she was talking to. No idea that men with far more power had disappeared for showing him less disrespect. No idea that the person she was casually challenging controlled more of Seoul than the mayor. And somehow, impossibly, that made her the most fascinating person he'd encountered in years. What's your name? He asked. Why does that matter? Because I'd like to know who's brave enough to lecture my security staff about federal regulations. She studied him for a long moment, clearly weighing whether this was a genuine question or a threat. Finally, she held out her tablet. Nyla Carter. License verification is on the screen. Are you going to provide yours, or do I need to call my supervisor and report this entire building for regulatory violations? Nyla. The name felt unusual on his tongue. Foreign. Real. Dojin reached into his suit jacket. Every security guard tensed, but he just pulled out his corporate identification card and held it toward her. She took it, examined it with the same careful attention she'd give any document, then scanned it with her tablet. After a moment, she nodded and held out the package along with the tablet. Sign here, use your full legal name. He signed. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, rough workers' hands against his smooth ones, and he felt an electric shock of contact that made no logical sense. She took back the tablet, verified the signature, then handed him the package. Transport temperature was maintained between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius throughout delivery. Handle with care. Have a good day. Then she turned and walked toward the lobby exit, like she hadn't just treated one of Korea's most dangerous men like an ordinary customer. Dojin stood frozen, watching her push through the glass doors into the rain outside. She pulled up the hood of her jacket and disappeared down the street without looking back. Sir? Kwan appeared at his elbow. Should we find out everything about her? Sir? The driver, Nyla Carter. I want to know where she lives, where she works, who she knows, everything. Kwan's expression shifted to something almost like concern. Is she a threat? Dojin stared at the rain-slicked street where she'd vanished. For the first time in years, he felt something crack open inside the ice he'd built around himself. Something dangerous and utterly unwelcome. "I don't know yet," he said quietly, but they both knew that was a lie. 3 days later, Dojin sat in his office reviewing the background report Kwan had compiled. It was surprisingly simple. No red flags, no hidden connections, just the mundane reality of an immigrant struggling to survive in an expensive city. Nyla Carter, 26 years old, originally from Chicago, came to Seoul 4 years ago on a teaching contract that fell through after 6 months when the school lost funding. Stayed anyway, working whatever jobs she could find. Currently employed by a pharmaceutical courier service during the day and a small neighborhood bakery at night. No family in Korea, no criminal record, no debt beyond student loans, no social media presence worth mentioning. She lived alone in a tiny efficiency apartment in a working-class neighborhood north of the river, took the subway everywhere, sent money back to her mother in Chicago every month. She was nobody, invisible. The kind of person Seoul chewed up and forgot about, and Dojin couldn't stop thinking about her. It made no sense. She wasn't beautiful in the polished way the women in his world performed beauty. No designer clothes, no strategic cosmetic procedures, no calculated presentation. She was just real, tired and real, and completely unimpressed by power. She'd looked at him and seen a customer, not the Ice King, not a weapon, just a man who needed to sign for a package. And that had destroyed something inside him he didn't know was still capable of breaking. "This is insane," he muttered to himself, staring at the surveillance photo Kwan had included. Nyla walking out of the subway station, hood up against the rain, looking exhausted. He should forget her. People like her didn't survive in his world. Getting involved would only put her in danger. But his hand was already reaching for the phone. "Kwan, I need you to create a pharmaceutical emergency." Silence on the other end. Then, "Sir?" "Kang Enterprises has a research facility in Gangnam. Tomorrow morning, they'll need an urgent delivery of temperature-controlled materials. Use the same courier service. Request Nyla Carter specifically." "Mr. Kang, with respect, this seems... I don't pay you to question me. Make it happen." He hung up and leaned back in his chair, staring at the city lights below. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. Everything in his training, his experience, his survival instincts told him to leave her alone. But for the first time in years, Kang Dojin wanted something he couldn't simply take or buy. He wanted to see if that moment in the lobby had been real. But the delivery request came through at 6:30 in the morning. Priority transport, temperature-sensitive materials. Client specified. Nyla Carter must handle the delivery personally due to previous demonstrated commitment to protocol compliance. Nyla read the request twice while eating instant ramen in her apartment's tiny kitchen, trying to figure out if this was legitimate or some kind of setup. She remembered the man from Kang Enterprises. Impossible not to. The way the entire lobby had gone silent when he appeared. The way security had looked at him like he was dangerous. The way he'd watched her leave like she'd done something unexpected. She'd looked him up afterward. Kang Dojin, CEO of Kang Enterprises, youngest executive to run a corporation that size in Korean history, estimated net worth in the billions, connected to old money families and political power brokers, and according to rumors that came up on foreign message boards, possibly connected to far darker things. The Korean internet was carefully controlled, but English-language forums were full of whispers about the Kang family's real business. Protection rackets, underground gambling, political corruption. Nyla had learned to be careful in Seoul. Foreign women, especially black women, had to navigate additional layers of suspicion and discrimination. She kept her head down, worked hard, stayed out of trouble. The last thing she needed was to get tangled up with powerful people who might be criminals. But the delivery was legitimate. The medications were real, and she needed the paycheck. So at 7:15, she picked up the cooler pack from dispatch and headed to Gangnam. The research facility was smaller than the main Kang Tower, but just as pristine. All glass and steel, tucked into a quiet business district away from the tourist areas. Light morning traffic, clean streets, the kind of neighborhood where even the sidewalks looked expensive. Nyla went through security at the loading dock, proper protocol this time, and was directed to a conference room on the third floor to complete the transfer. She should have known something was wrong when they sent her to a conference room instead of a lab. The door opened before she could knock. Kang Dojin stood on the other side, wearing another perfect suit, looking exactly as controlled and unreadable as he had in the lobby 3 days ago. "Ms. Carter," he said, "thank you for accommodating the urgent request." Nyla's grip tightened on the cooler handle. "Where's the receiving physician?" "Delayed. I have authorization to sign on his behalf." He held up an identification card. She scanned it. Legitimate credentials. Everything by the book. So why did this feel like a trap? "Temperature log is clean," she said, keeping her voice professional. "Materials maintained between 2 and 8 degrees throughout transport. I need your signature and timestamp." He signed. Their fingers didn't touch this time, but she was hyper-aware of the distance between them, of the way he smelled. Expensive cologne and something else. Something darker, like smoke and leather. Of how the conference room suddenly felt too small. "Can I ask you something?" he said as she packed up her tablet. "Depends on the question. Why did you stay in Seoul after your teaching contract ended?" Nyla looked up sharply. That information wasn't public. "How do you know about that?" "I make it my business to understand people who interest me." "I don't interest you. I delivered a package. You treated me like an ordinary person. Do you understand how rare that is?" "Sounds like a you problem." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. People clearly didn't talk to him this way. Nyla shouldered her delivery bag. "I stayed because going back felt like failing. Because I already spent everything I had getting here. Because starting over somewhere else seemed harder than surviving here. Satisfied?" "No," he said quietly. "Have dinner with me." "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because men like you don't ask women like me to dinner unless they want something I'm not selling." His expression shifted to something she couldn't read. "What do you think I want?" "I don't know, but I've been in Seoul long enough to recognize danger when it's standing 3 feet away wearing a $10,000 suit." She moved toward the door. He didn't stop her, but his voice followed her into the hallway. "What if I just want to have dinner with someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being ridiculous?" Nyla paused at the elevator, finger hovering over the button. She should leave. Should run back to her quiet, careful life and forget this conversation ever happened. Instead, she turned around. "If I say yes, will you stop creating fake pharmaceutical emergencies just to see me?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Possibly." "You're insane." "Frequently." Nyla stared at him for a long moment, weighing options that all felt dangerous in different ways. Rich men were trouble. Rich men with rumored criminal connections were lethal. And rich men who looked at her like she was a puzzle they needed to solve were the worst kind of all. But there was something in his eyes. Something lonely and carefully hidden beneath all that control. Something that recognized the same exhaustion she carried. "One dinner," she said. "Somewhere public, somewhere cheap. And the second you act like this is anything other than 2 people eating food, I'm gone." "Deal." "I'm serious. No gifts, no expensive restaurants, no driver picking me up in a car worth more than my yearly salary." "Understood." She stepped into the elevator. "Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Meet me outside Hongdae Station, and if you're late, I'm leaving." The doors slid closed before he could respond. Nyla leaned against the elevator wall, heart pounding, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. Thursday evening arrived wrapped in humidity and the smell of street food. Hongdae Station at 7 o'clock was a riot of noise and movement. University students heading to clubs, tourists hunting for nightlife, food vendors shouting over each other advertising fried chicken and tteokbokki and grilled meat. Nyla waited by exit 3 wearing jeans and a simple black tank top, feeling ridiculous. He wouldn't show. Or worse, he'd show up with security guards and expectations. And she'd have to walk away from whatever this was before it started. But at 6:58, Kang Dojin appeared through the crowd wearing dark jeans and a plain white t-shirt that probably cost more than her rent, but at least looked normal. No guards, no driver, just him, looking strangely uncertain for someone who supposedly controlled half of Seoul's underworld. "You're early," she said. "You told me not to be late." Most men would interpret that as 7 sharp. Not 7 minus 2 minutes. "I'm not most men." "Yeah," Nyla said dryly. "I'm getting that impression." They started walking. Dojin seemed content to follow her lead, which was somehow more unsettling than if he'd tried to take control. She brought him to a small restaurant tucked down a side street, the kind of place with plastic chairs and metal tables where ajumas shouted orders and the kimchi came in chipped bowls. The owner recognized her immediately. "Nyla, you brought a friend." "Something like that," Nyla said in Korean, then switched to English for Dojin. "They make the best jigae in Seoul, cheap and perfect." They ordered. The food came fast and hot. Bubbling tofu stew, rice, banchan spread across the metal table. Dojin ate without complaint, even though Nyla suspected this was the least expensive meal he'd had in years. "So," she said, "why are you really here?" "I told you, I wanted to have dinner with someone who isn't afraid to be honest." "Bullshit. Rich men don't pursue delivery drivers because they want honesty. They do it because they're bored, or they get off on slumming, or they want to feel like saviors." "Which one do you think I am?" "I haven't decided yet, but I'll know by the end of this meal." Dojin set down his spoon. "What if I said, I don't know why I'm here? That for the first time in longer than I can remember, I met someone who looked at me and saw a person instead of a resource to be used or an obstacle to be avoided?" "I'd say that sounds lonely." "It is." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. No performance, no careful corporate polish, just plain, exhausted truth. "Why did you really stay in Seoul?" he asked. Nyla picked at her rice. "I told you, going home felt like failing." "That's the practical answer. What's the real one?" She looked up. His dark eyes were steady, patient, genuinely curious rather than interrogating. "Because in Chicago, I knew exactly who I was supposed to be," she said slowly. "Daughter, student, good black girl who checks all the boxes. And I was drowning in it. Here I'm nobody, just another foreigner trying to survive, and yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I work 2 jobs and live in a place the size of a closet, but it's mine. I chose it. Does that make sense?" "More than you know." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The restaurant filled up with students and office workers, everyone shouting and laughing. Normal people living normal lives. "What do you do?" Nyla asked. "Besides pharmaceutical emergencies." "I run the family business." "Which is?" "Complicated." "That's not an answer." Dojin's expression shifted to something guarded. "No, it's not." Nyla leaned back in her chair. "See, this is the part where you decide whether you're actually interested in honesty or whether this whole dinner was just rich guy theater. If I tell you the truth, you'll leave. If you don't, I'm leaving anyway." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his bowl like it held answers. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the restaurant noise. "My family owns Kang Enterprises. The pharmaceutical and technology divisions are legitimate, but we also control other operations, protection, information, money movement through channels that don't appear on official documents. My father built an empire that exists in the spaces between legal and illegal, and when he died, I inherited all of it." Nyla's stomach dropped. "You're telling me you're a criminal?" "I'm telling you I'm exactly what the rumors say I am. And you thought this was good first date conversation? You asked for honesty. She should leave, should walk out right now and never look back." This was every warning her mother had ever given her about dangerous men and bad decisions. Instead, she asked, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to hear it eventually. Seoul is a small city when it comes to people like me, and I'd rather you hear the truth from me than from someone trying to scare you away." Mission accomplished. I'm terrified. "Are you?" Nyla met his eyes, saw something in them that looked more exhausted than dangerous, more trapped than threatening. "I'm thinking about it," she said honestly. Dojin nodded slowly. "I understand if you want to leave." "Do you want me to leave?" "No." "Why not?" "Because for 2 hours I felt like a person instead of a weapon, and I'm selfish enough to want that feeling to last a little longer." The raw vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in her chest. This was stupid, reckless. Everything about this dinner screamed danger, but Nyla Carter had never been good at walking away from broken things. "One more dinner," she heard herself say. somewhere just as cheap, and you have to tell me something true about yourself that isn't about business or power or money. That's a high price. Consider it payment for making me like you despite my better judgment." This time he did smile. Small and genuine and completely unexpected. It transformed his entire face, made him look years younger. They stayed at the restaurant until the owner started giving them pointed looks about the late hour. Walked through Hongdae afterward, past street performers and drunk students and couples holding hands beneath fairy lights. At the subway station, Dojin stopped. "Thank you," he said, "for taking a chance on dinner with someone you probably shouldn't trust. Thank you for not being as terrible as I expected. I'll work harder to meet your low expectations next time." Nyla laughed despite herself. "You're ridiculous." Frequently. She descended into the subway station, feeling his eyes on her back the entire way. On the train home, squeezed between tired workers heading back from late shifts, she tried to convince herself this was just 2 dinners. Just curiosity, just 2 lonely people sharing cheap food. But her hands were shaking, and she knew with absolute certainty that Kang Dojin was going to ruin her life in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. The second dinner happened 4 days later at a ramyun shop near the Han River where tourists never went. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The floor was cracked linoleum. Steam rose from boiling pots while the owner's teenage son shouted orders in a dialect so thick even Koreans struggled to understand him. Dojin arrived exactly on time, wearing jeans and a black hoodie that probably cost more than Nyla's monthly rent, but at least made him look less like someone who controlled half of Seoul's criminal infrastructure. "You're punctual," she said, already seated at a corner table. "You threatened to leave if I wasn't." Good memory. They ordered. The food came fast. Spicy ramyun with extra vegetables, cheap beer in plastic cups. Dojin ate like someone who'd forgotten what real hunger felt like, careful and measured even with instant noodles. "Tell me something true," Nyla said. That was the deal. Dojin set down his chopsticks, stared at the table like he was trying to figure out where to start. "My father never wanted me to take over the family business. He had an older brother, my uncle, who was supposed to inherit everything. But my uncle got ambitious, started making moves without approval, thought he could build his own empire." "What happened to him?" "My father killed him." Dojin's voice was flat, empty. "Shot him in our living room when I was 16. Made me watch. Said I needed to understand what loyalty meant in our world." Nyla felt something cold settle in her stomach. Jesus. "After that, my father trained me personally, every day. How to read people, how to control territory, how to know when someone was about to betray you before they knew it themselves. He taught me that trust was a luxury we couldn't afford, that love was a weapon people used against you, that the only way to survive was to become something no one could touch. That's not surviving, that's dying slowly." Dojin looked up, met her eyes. "I know." The honesty in his face was almost unbearable. This wasn't performance, wasn't manipulation. Just exhaustion wrapped in expensive clothes. "Why are you telling me this?" Nyla asked quietly. "Because you asked for something true, and because I'm tired of pretending I'm not exactly what my father made me." They finished eating in heavy silence, walked along the Han River afterward while the city reflected in the dark water like scattered diamonds. Joggers passed them. Couples took selfies. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that one of Seoul's most dangerous men was walking among them wearing a hoodie and looking lost. "Can I ask you something?" Dojin said eventually. "Depends. What do you see when you look at me?" Nyla stopped walking, turned to face him. The question felt like a trap, but his expression was genuine, vulnerable in a way that probably terrified him. "Honestly, I see someone who's been alone for so long he forgot what it feels like to be seen." Something cracked across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. "Does that scare you?" he asked. "Everything about you scares me. But that part just makes me sad." They stood there in the darkness while the river moved beside them, and Seoul hummed with oblivious life. And for just a moment, Kang Dojin looked like exactly what he was. A man who'd been turned into a weapon and didn't know how to be human anymore. "I should go," Nyla said finally. "I have the early shift tomorrow." "Can I see you again?" "You probably shouldn't." "That's not what I asked." Nyla pulled her jacket tighter against the night air. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake. that men like him only brought destruction, that getting involved would ruin everything she'd carefully built in Seoul. But loneliness recognized loneliness, and she was so tired of being careful. "One more dinner," she said, "but after that, you have to decide whether you actually want to know me or whether this is just rich guy curiosity about how the other half lives." "It's not curiosity." "Then what is it?" Dojin stepped closer, not threatening, just close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with the river air. "I don't know yet," he said quietly, "but I haven't felt this alive in years, and I'm not ready to give that up." Nyla left before she could say something stupid, took the subway home to her tiny apartment and lay awake until sunrise, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince herself she wasn't already in too deep. The third dinner became a fourth. The fourth became walks through neighborhoods where no one recognized him. Those walks became late-night phone calls that stretched past midnight while Nyla was supposed to be sleeping before her morning deliveries. He told her about growing up inside the Kang Empire, about learning to read contracts before he learned to read storybooks, about the first time he'd watched his father order someone killed, and how he'd thrown up afterward until there was nothing left. She told him about Chicago, about her mother working 3 jobs to keep them housed, about scholarships and student debt, and the particular exhaustion of being black in predominantly white spaces, of always having to be twice as good to be considered half as worthy. They talked about everything except what this was becoming. 6 weeks after that first dinner in Hongdae, Dojin showed up at the bakery where Nyla worked nights. It was past 11. The neighborhood was quiet. Nyla was closing up, wiping down tables while her boss counted the register in the back office. She looked up, and there he was, standing outside the glass door like he'd materialized from shadows. She let him in. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know. My boss will ask questions. I'll leave if you want me to." Nyla looked at him, really looked at him. Hair slightly messed up, tie loosened, exhaustion written across every line of his face. He looked like someone who'd been making terrible decisions all day and wasn't sure how to stop. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "I had to handle a situation tonight. One of our partners tried to renegotiate terms by threatening my CFO's family, so I spent 3 hours explaining why that was a mistake he wouldn't get to make twice." "Did you hurt him?" "No, but he'll wish I had." Nyla set down the rag she'd been using. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand what I am, because eventually you're going to have to decide if you can live with the truth about my life, and I'd rather you decide now before—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Before it hurts." "Before what hurts?" "This, us, whatever we're doing." Nyla leaned against the counter. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was the moment. The moment where she should walk away, should tell him this was insane and she couldn't get involved with someone who made people disappear. Instead, she asked, "Do you want to stay for a while? I have to finish cleaning, but there's coffee, and leftover pastries that didn't sell today." Relief washed across his face so completely it was almost painful to witness. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'd like that." So she finished cleaning while he sat at a corner table drinking bad coffee and eating day-old croissants. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The silence between them had become its own language. When her boss finally emerged from the back office, she took one look at Dojin and raised an eyebrow at Nyla. "Friend of yours?" "Something like that." "He looks expensive." "He is." The boss, a woman in her 50s who'd been running the bakery for 20 years, studied Dojin with the particular assessment of someone who'd seen everything Seoul had to offer. "You be careful," she said to Nyla in Korean. "Men who look like that don't date girls like us unless they want something." "I know." "Do you?" Nyla met her boss's eyes. "I'm trying to figure that out." After her boss left, Nyla and Dojin walked through the empty streets together, past closed shops and sleeping apartments, past stray cats and flickering streetlights. "What did she say to you?" Dojin asked. "That you look expensive, and I should be careful." "She's right." "I know." They stopped outside Nyla's apartment building, run-down exterior, flickering security light, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and nobody expected anything better. "I should let you sleep," Dojin said. "Probably." but neither of them moved. Nyla. Her name sounded different in his voice. Careful, almost reverent. I need to tell you something. That sounds ominous. There are people in my world who won't understand this. Us. They'll see you as a weakness, something to be exploited. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest. Because if we keep doing this, if we keep getting closer, eventually someone will notice. And when they do, your life will become dangerous in ways you can't imagine. Nyla crossed her arms. So what are you saying? That we should stop? I'm saying you deserve to know what you're getting into before it's too late to walk away. And what about what you want? Dojin stepped closer, close enough that she could see the conflict written across his face. The war between what he knew was smart and what he actually wanted. What I want doesn't matter. Your safety matters. Bullshit. What you want matters to me. Why? Because for the first time in years, I met someone who looks at me like I'm not just another foreigner trying to survive in a city that doesn't want me. Because you're broken in ways that make sense to me. Because I'm tired of being careful, and you make me want to take stupid risks. The words hung between them like a confession neither of them could take back. Dojin's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. His eyes searched hers like he was trying to memorize her features. This is a mistake, he whispered. Probably. You should tell me to leave. I should. But instead she kissed him. It started soft, hesitant, like neither of them quite believed it was real. Then something broke open, and the kiss turned desperate. All the loneliness and hunger and fear they'd been carrying crashing together in the darkness outside her apartment building. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dojin rested his forehead against hers. Come upstairs, Nyla said quietly. Nyla? I know it's a mistake, I know it's dangerous, I know every single reason this is a terrible idea. Come upstairs anyway. He followed her up 4 flights of stairs to her tiny efficiency. One room serving as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. Bathroom the size of a closet. Everything she owned visible at a glance. The entire space probably smaller than his closet. Dojin stood in the doorway looking around like he'd stepped into another universe. It's not much, Nyla said. It's yours. Yeah. She made tea because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. They sat on her narrow bed, the only real furniture down, drinking from mismatched mugs while Soul hummed outside the single window. Can I ask you something? Nyla said eventually. Always. Have you ever been in love? Dojin was quiet for a long moment. I thought I was. Once, when I was 22, before I took over the family business. Her name was Park Mina. She was studying art history, wanted to open a gallery. We dated for 8 months. What happened? My father happened, found out about her, told me that love was a liability in our world, that enemies would use her against me, that I had to choose between her safety and keeping her in my life. Jesus, what did you do? I broke up with her, told her I didn't love her, made it cruel enough that she wouldn't try to come back. Then I watched from a distance while she finished school, opened her gallery, got married to someone safe, someone who couldn't get her killed just by being associated with him. Do you regret it? Every day. But she's alive. She's happy. That's what matters. Nyla set down her mug. Is that what you're going to do to me? Decide I'm safer without you and disappear? I don't know. I'm trying to be smarter than I was at 22, but being around you makes me want to be selfish. Then be selfish. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking you to stop making decisions for me. I'm asking you to treat me like an adult who can assess her own risk. I'm asking you to stay. Dojin looked at her like she'd just offered him something he'd stopped believing existed. I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone without destroying them. Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her mouth. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers traced the shape of his jaw. They didn't sleep together that night, just held each other in her narrow bed while the city moved outside. Dojin told her about scars on his body from fights she'd never know about. Nyla told him about the nightmares she still had about her father leaving when she was 8. And somewhere around 4 in the morning, wrapped in cheap blankets in each other's warmth, they both finally admitted what this was. I'm falling in love with you, Dojin whispered into her hair, and it terrifies me. Good, Nyla whispered back, because I'm already there, and misery loves company. He left before sunrise, before her neighbors could see him, kissed her goodbye at the door like he was going to war and might not come back. For 3 days, everything felt perfect. Then Seo Yuna saw them together. It happened on a Tuesday evening in Itaewon. Nyla had finished her delivery shift early. Dojin had canceled a meeting he probably shouldn't have canceled. They'd agreed to meet at a small Ethiopian restaurant tucked into a side street where the owner knew Nyla by name. They were careful. No touching in public. No obvious affection. Just two people sharing a meal. But Seo Yuna had been following him for weeks. She'd seen him change. Seen the way he smiled at his phone when he thought no one was watching. Seen him leave the office at reasonable hours instead of working until midnight. Seen him become human again in ways that insulted everything she'd been trying to accomplish for 2 years. Seo Yuna had been raised to understand power. Her father controlled Busan's shipping routes. Her mother came from one of Seoul's oldest families. She'd been groomed since childhood to marry and to influence, to solidify alliances, to be the kind of woman who made empires stronger. And she'd chosen Kang Dojin, had pursued him methodically, had positioned herself at every event he attended, had made herself indispensable to his social obligations. Then this nobody, this foreign delivery driver living in a slum apartment, had somehow accomplished what Yuna couldn't. She'd made him feel. Yuna took photos from across the street. Nothing dramatic, just Dojin and Nyla talking over injera and Watt. Just the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. By the time they finished dinner, Yuna had already sent the photos to 3 people. Her father, the editor of Seoul's most vicious gossip blog, and Kim Jae-won, second in command of the Yoon Syndicate, the Kong Empire's most dangerous rival. The gossip blog published first. Nyla was finishing her morning deliveries when her phone exploded with notifications. Texts from coworkers, messages from people she barely knew, links to an article with photos of her and Dojin that made her stomach drop. Kong Empire's Ice King melts for mystery foreign woman. The article was vicious, speculated about who she was, where she came from, whether she was a spy or a gold digger, or just naive enough to think someone like Dojin could actually care about someone like her. The comments were worse. Racism wrapped in curiosity, speculation about her intentions, warnings about foreign women who came to Korea to trap rich men. Nyla sat in her delivery van outside a pharmaceutical clinic, hands shaking, trying not to throw up. Her phone rang. Dojin. "Don't read the comments," he said immediately. "Too late." "Where are you?" "Working." "I'm sending Kwan to—" "No." Her voice came out harder than she intended. "No guards. No security. I'm not some princess who needs protecting. Nyla, this is serious. Once your face is public, people will come looking. Reporters, rivals, everyone who wants leverage against me. So this is about you." Silence on the other end. Then, "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it? I'm not worried about me, Dojin. I'm worried about being the weakness everyone's going to use to destroy you." "You're not a weakness." "Then what am I?" More silence, heavy and complicated. "I need to see you," he said finally. "Tonight, please." Nyla closed her eyes. "The bakery. After close. Come through the back." She hung up before he could respond. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. People stared at her, whispered. A few clients asked if she was that girl from the news. She smiled and delivered packages and pretended her entire life wasn't falling apart. By the time she got to the bakery that night, she was exhausted down to her bones. Her boss pulled her aside immediately. "I saw the article. I'm sorry if this causes problems for the shop. I'm not worried about the shop. I'm worried about you. Do you understand what you've gotten yourself into?" "I'm starting to." Men like that, men with that kind of power, they don't date regular people. They collect them, use them, then move on when something shinier comes along. He's not like that. Every woman who's been destroyed by a powerful man believed that right up until the moment she wasn't special anymore. Nyla wanted to argue, wanted to defend Dojin, wanted to believe that what they had was different. But doubt had started growing inside her chest like poison. Dojin arrived at 11:30, coming through the back alley like a ghost. He looked wrecked, suit rumpled, hair messed up, eyes carrying the particular exhaustion of someone who'd spent all day doing damage control. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I should have been more careful. Should have known Yuna was watching. Should have... Who's Yuna?" His expression shifted. "Seo Yuna, Lee Sang-woo's daughter. She's been pursuing me for a while." "Pursuing you how?" "Socially, professionally. She wants to be seen as the appropriate match for someone in my position. Old family, political connections, all the things that matter in my world." Nyla felt something cold settle in her stomach. "And what do you want?" "You. I want you." "But she makes sense, right? For your world, for your empire. I'm just the novelty, the distraction, the thing that made you feel human for a while before you go back to your real life. That's not true. Isn't it? Look at me, Dojin. Look at this place. Look at my life. I deliver packages and bake bread and live in a room the size of your bathroom. What exactly do you think this is?" "I think this is the only real thing I've had in years. Until it stops being convenient. Until your enemies use me against you. Until I become more trouble than I'm worth." Dojin moved toward her. She stepped back. "Don't." Her voice cracked. "Don't touch me right now. Because if you touch me, I'll forget that this is insane. That we're from completely different worlds. That eventually this is going to destroy one or both of us." "Nyla, I saw the comments, saw what people are saying about me, about us. They think I'm using you. That I'm some gold-digging foreigner who's manipulating you. And part of me wonders if they're right, not about the gold digging, but about not belonging in your world. You think I care what those people think? I think you should, because they're your world, your allies, your business partners, and I'm nobody. I'm the girl who delivers your packages and bakes bread. What happens when being with me costs you something real? When your rivals use me to hurt you? When your father's legacy demands you choose between me and the Empire?" Dojin's jaw tightened. "My father's dead. His legacy doesn't get a vote. But his world does. And that world is never going to accept someone like me." They stood there in the dim bakery light, two people from incompatible universes trying to figure out if want was enough to bridge the distance. "Tell me what you need," Dojin said quietly. "Tell me how to fix this." "I don't know if you can." "Then tell me what you're afraid of." Nyla met his eyes. "I'm afraid you're going to realize I'm not worth the trouble. That being with me costs more than you're willing to pay. That one day you'll look at me and see exactly what everyone else sees. A naive foreign girl who was stupid enough to fall in love with someone completely out of her league. That's never going to happen. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Because you're the first person in my entire life who's made me want to be better. Who's made me believe I could be something other than what my father built me to be. Who's looked at me and seen a person instead of a weapon. What if that's not enough? Then we'll find out together." He reached for her again. This time, she let him. Let his arms wrap around her, let herself cry into his expensive shirt while the city slept outside and her entire life cracked open. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too." "What do we do?" "We keep going. We figure it out. We don't let them win." She pulled back enough to look at his face. "And when your enemies come for me? Because they will. You know they will." Something dark flickered across his expression. Something that reminded her exactly who he was underneath the vulnerability. "Then I'll make them regret it." Ugh. The next morning, Nyla woke to 17 missed calls. 12 were from numbers she didn't recognize. 3 were from her mother in Chicago. 2 were from her delivery service supervisor. She called work first. "Nyla, I'm sorry." Her supervisor sounded genuinely apologetic. "Corporate made the call. They can't have employees involved in situations that might reflect poorly on the company. You're being let go effective immediately." "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know, but the photos are everywhere and clients are asking questions. I fought for you, but it's fine. Thanks for trying." She hung up and stared at the ceiling of her tiny apartment. One day after going public, she'd already lost her main source of income. Her phone rang again, her mother. "Baby, what is going on? Someone sent me an article about you and some Korean gangster. Please tell me this is fake news." "Mom, but do you understand how dangerous this is? Do you understand what you're risking?" These people are criminals, Nyla. They hurt people. They kill people. I know what he is. Then why are you with him? Because he makes me feel less alone. Her mother was quiet for a long moment, then softly. Baby, loneliness isn't a good enough reason to destroy your life. I'm not destroying my life. I'm just trying something different. Different is moving to a new city. Different is changing careers. Different is not dating a mobster who's going to get you killed. He's not going to. You don't know that. You can't know that. These men, baby, they don't love like normal people. They own. They possess. And when you stop being useful, they dispose. He's not like that. Every woman thinks that until she ends up on the news as collateral damage. Nyla closed her eyes. Her mother wasn't wrong. Everything she was saying was logical and smart and exactly what any sane person would think. But Nyla had stopped being sane the moment Kang Dojin looked at her like she was worth more than survival. I have to go, Mom. I'll call you later. Nyla Marie Carter, don't you dare hang up on me when we're talking about your safety. She hung up, felt immediately guilty, but couldn't handle one more person telling her what she already knew. The bakery called next. Her boss, voice strained, I'm so sorry. The owner saw the articles. He's worried about publicity, about customers feeling uncomfortable. He asked me to let you go. 2 jobs gone in one morning. Nyla lay in bed staring at water stains on her ceiling, watching her carefully constructed life and soul disintegrate like wet paper. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dojin. I heard about your jobs. I'm fixing it. She typed back. I don't want your money. It's not about money, it's about making sure people understand you're off limits. I don't need protection. I need you to understand that I have to be able to take care of myself. If I can't survive here without you, then what's the point? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, you're right. I'm sorry. What can I actually do? Nothing. Just be here. Always. She believed him. That was the problem. Despite everything logical telling her to run, she believed him. Yet, that evening, Nyla went to a convenience store near her apartment to buy instant ramen for dinner. The cashier stared at her face a little too long. 2 high school girls whispered and took photos. An older man made a comment in Korean fast enough that she couldn't catch all of it, but she understood the word prostitute. She paid and left quickly, heart pounding, face burning. 3 blocks from her apartment, a black sedan pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. A man in an expensive suit smiled at her. Handsome, well-groomed, everything about him screaming wealth and danger. Nyla Carter, he said in perfect English. You're even prettier in person. Every instinct she had screamed danger. I don't know you. Not yet, but you're going to. My name is Kim Jae-won. I work for people who are very interested in your relationship with Kang Dojin. I have nothing to say to you. She kept walking. The car crawled along beside her. You should know that being associated with Dojin makes you a target. His enemies become your enemies. His debts become your debts. Every move he makes puts you in danger. I already know that. Do you? Do you know that the Kong Empire has murdered 17 people in the last year? That Dojin personally ordered 8 of those executions? That the man you're sleeping with has blood on his hands that will never wash clean? Nyla stopped walking, turned to face the car. What do you want? Just to warn you about who you're involved with, about what happens to people who get too close to the Kong family. They burn, Ms. Carter. Everyone around them eventually burns. Is that a threat? Kim Jae-won smiled. Just friendly advice, from one person to another. Be careful who you trust. The window rolled up. The car drove away. Nyla stood on the street corner, hands shaking, trying to convince herself she wasn't in over her head. She called Dojin. Voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. 3rd time, Kwon answered his phone. Miss Carter, Mr. Kang is currently unavailable. Where is he? Handling a situation. I'll have him call you as soon as possible. Someone from the Yoon Syndicate just approached me, Kim Jae-won. He was, where are you? Kwon's voice shifted from professional to lethal in half a second. 3 blocks from my apartment, heading home. Stay on the phone with me. Don't hang up, and don't go inside your apartment until I tell you it's clear. What? Why? What's happening? But Quan was already barking orders to someone else, car engines in the background, radio chatter. Nyla kept walking, phone pressed to her ear, while every shadow on the street suddenly looked threatening. "Ms. Carter, I need you to turn left at the next corner. There's a cafe. Go inside and wait." "Quan, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. Kim Jae-won approaching you directly means the Yoon Syndicate is making a move. And they don't make moves unless they're planning something permanent." She reached the cafe, stumbled inside, ordered coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 15 minutes later, Dojin crashed through the door. He looked like violence incarnate. Suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, blood on his knuckles, eyes scanning the cafe like he was hunting for threats. When he spotted her, relief washed across his face so completely it was almost painful. He crossed to her table in 3 strides, pulled her up, held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You're okay," he whispered into her hair. "You're okay. What's happening?" He pulled back enough to look at her face, and for the first time since she'd known him, Kang Dojin looked truly afraid. "They know about you. They're going to come after you to hurt me, and I can't—" His voice cracked. "I can't let that happen." "Who's they?" "The Yoon Syndicate. They've been trying to take territory from me for months. This morning, Kim Jae-won sent a message through unofficial channels. He said if I don't surrender control of 3 shipping routes, they'll make me regret having something worth protecting." Nyla felt the blood drain from her face. "They're threatening me." "Yes. So what do we do?" Dojin's hands came up to cup her face. His expression was anguished, desperate. "You leave Seoul. Tonight. I'll arrange everything. Money, documentation, new identity if necessary. You go somewhere safe where they can't touch you." "And then what? I just disappear from your life?" "You stay alive. That's what matters." Nyla pulled away from him. "No." Nyla, "No. I'm not running. I'm not letting them win. I'm not proving everyone right who said I don't belong in your world. This isn't about pride. This is about survival." "Then we survive together." "You don't understand what you're saying. These people—" "I understand perfectly. You think I haven't lived with danger before? You think growing up black in Chicago didn't teach me about violence? About being a target just for existing? I've been fighting to survive my entire life. I'm not stopping now." Dojin grabbed her shoulders. Not rough, but firm enough to make her meet his eyes. "If they hurt you because of me, I won't survive it. Do you understand? I have done terrible things in my life. I have hurt people. I have made decisions that keep me awake at night. But losing you would destroy whatever humanity I have left." Tears burned behind Nyla's eyes. "Then don't lose me. Fight for me. For us. But don't ask me to run." They stood there at the cafe while other customers pretended not to stare. 2 people from different worlds trying to figure out if love was enough to survive what was coming. Finally, Dojin whispered, "If you stay, everything changes. I'll have to protect you, which means you'll have to follow security protocols, live differently, give up parts of your freedom, and I'll have to become something I've been trying not to be around you." "What's that?" "The monster everyone thinks I am." Nyla reached up to touch his face, felt the tension in his jaw, the fear he was trying so hard to hide. "Then be a monster, but be mine." Something shifted in his expression, something dark and possessive and absolutely certain. He kissed her hard, claiming, promising, then pulled back and made a phone call. "Quan, I need full security detail on Nyla Carter effective immediately. 24-hour protection, apartment sweep, background checks on everyone in her building, and I want eyes on every member of the Yoon Syndicate above street level." He paused, listening. "I don't care what it costs. She's mine, and anyone who touches her dies." He hung up, met Nyla's eyes. "No going back now." "I know. Your life is never going to be normal again." "I know that too." He kissed her forehead. "Then let's go home. I'm not letting you out of my sight until this is handled." Nyla followed him out to where Quan waited with 2 armed security guards and a car that probably cost more than her yearly salary. She was climbing in when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was a single photo. Her mother's house in Chicago, recent picture, taken from across the street. Below it, "Everyone has something to lose." Nyla's hands started shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. Dojin saw, took the phone from her, read the message, and every trace of humanity left his face. "Get in the car," he said quietly. "Dojin, get in the car." She did. Watched him make 3 phone calls rapid fire. Watched his expression turn into something that finally looked like the rumors she'd heard about him. When he climbed in beside her, his voice was flat, empty, lethal. "I'm ending this. Tonight. Whatever happens next, stay close to Quan. He'll keep you safe." "Where are you going?" He looked at her, and in his eyes, she finally saw the Mafia boss everyone feared. "To remind the Yoon Syndicate why no one touches what's mine." The car pulled away from the curb, and Nyla realized with absolute certainty that there was no going back, no escape, no return to normal. She'd chosen this, chosen him. Now they'd both have to live with the consequences. The car cut through Seoul like a blade through water. Nyla sat in the back seat beside Kwon while Dojin made phone calls in a language that sounded like Korean but carried undertones of violence she didn't need to translate. His voice was flat, clinical, every word a calculated strike. "I want every Yoon operation in Seoul shut down within the hour. I don't care how you do it. Burn them if you have to." Pause. "No. No warnings. They threaten my family. They don't get mercy." He hung up, made another call. "Pull every favor we have with the police commissioner. I want Kim Jae-won's location within 30 minutes, or I'm assuming the commissioner is compromised." Another pause. "Then replace him." Nyla watched this transformation with something between fascination and horror. This wasn't the man who'd eaten cheap ramyun with her. This was the Ice King, the monster Seoul whispered about in dark rooms. The reason rival syndicates left territories untouched. He glanced at her. Something human flickered behind his eyes for just a second before disappearing back into cold calculation. "Your mother will have protection by morning. I'm sending 3 of my best people to Chicago, former military. They'll watch her house until this is resolved." "How long will that take?" "As long as necessary." The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Nyla didn't recognize. Concrete and shadows. The kind of place that didn't officially exist on any map. Security guards materialized from alcoves wearing tactical gear that looked military grade. Quan opened her door. "This way, Ms. Carter." "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe." She followed him through steel doors and down corridors lit by industrial lighting. Everything felt sterile, weaponized, like a facility designed for things that couldn't happen in daylight. They reached an apartment at the end of one hallway, modern, secure, windows that looked bulletproof. Quan opened the door and gestured inside. "You'll stay here tonight. There's food in the kitchen. Bathrooms stocked. 2 guards will be stationed outside at all times." "I'm a prisoner." "You're protected. There's a difference." "Is there?" Kwan's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Kang is trying to keep you alive. Please don't make that harder than it already is." Nyla stepped inside, heard the door lock behind her with a finality that made her stomach drop. She was alone in a luxury prison while the man she loved went to war. Dojin stood in his office on the 42nd floor, looking down at Seoul like a general surveying a battlefield. Minho appeared in the doorway with a tablet. "Kim Jae-won's location confirmed. He's at a restaurant in Gangnam, public place, lots of witnesses." "He wants me to come to him?" "It's a trap." "Obviously." Dojin turned from the window. "How many men does he have inside?" "At least 6. Probably more in reserve. He's baiting you into starting a public war. Then let's give him what he wants." Minho hesitated. "Sir, with respect, this is exactly what the Yoon Syndicate wants. They're trying to provoke you into doing something that will bring law enforcement down on both organizations. It's not about territory anymore. It's about destroying you personally." "I know." Dojin's voice was ice. "Which is why I'm going to finish this before it escalates. Kim Jae-won threatened Nyla. He sent people to photograph her mother's home. That crosses every line we have. If I don't respond with overwhelming force, every 2-bit gang in Seoul will think the Kang Empire is weak. And if you kill him in a public restaurant, then everyone will remember why they fear me." Minho studied him for a long moment. "This isn't strategy. This is emotion. You're about to start a war because you're in love with her." "Yes." That's not how you were trained to think. I don't care anymore. Dojin grabbed his jacket. My father built this empire on fear and isolation. He taught me that caring about people was weakness, that love was a liability, and maybe he was right. But I'd rather burn everything he built than lose her. Even if it costs you the empire? Even then. They took 3 cars. Dojin rode in the middle vehicle with 4 guards who looked like they'd kill someone just for breathing wrong. The drive to Gangnam took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Outside the restaurant, valets moved between expensive cars. Well-dressed couples waited for tables. Normal people having normal nights, completely unaware of the violence about to erupt. Dojin walked through the entrance like he owned the building. Maybe he did. Half of Gangnam's commercial real estate had Kang family money buried in its foundation. The hostess took one look at his face and stepped aside without a word. Kim Jae-won sat at a corner booth surrounded by men pretending to be friends but positioned like bodyguards. He saw Dojin approaching and smiled, gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Mr. Kang, how good of you to join me." Dojin sat. His guards fanned out behind him. The restaurant went very quiet. "You threatened someone under my protection. I simply delivered information. What she does with that information is her choice. You photographed her mother's home. Public street, public photography. Nothing illegal about it." Dojin leaned forward. When he spoke, his voice carried the particular quiet that preceded violence. "Let me be very clear about something. Nyla Carter is off limits. Her family is off limits. Anyone who looks at her wrong is off limits. You came at me through her because you thought I'd gone soft. That loving someone made me weak. But what it actually did was give me a reason to stop being careful." Kim Jae-won's smile widened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. You have 24 hours to leave Seoul. Take your operation and disappear. Because if you're still in this city tomorrow night, I'm going to dismantle the Yoon Syndicate piece by piece until there's nothing left but stories people tell to scare children." Bold words, but we both know you can't actually start a war. Not without bringing law enforcement down on both of us. Not without exposing operations that rely on staying invisible. You're trapped, Dojin, and you know it. Dojin stood slowly. "You're making assumptions about what I'm willing to sacrifice. That's a mistake." He turned to leave. Made it 3 steps before Kim Jae-won spoke again. "How long do you think she'll stay with you? Once she really understands what you are? Once she sees you kill someone? Once your enemies hurt her in ways that leave permanent scars? Love doesn't survive in our world, Dojin. It just dies slowly while you watch." Dojin stopped. Didn't turn around. 24 hours. After that, you're a ghost. He walked out into the Seoul night with murder in his eyes and the taste of war on his tongue. Tabasi. Back at the safe house, Nyla couldn't sleep. She paced the apartment while her mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Her mother in danger. Dojin starting a war. Her entire life unraveling because she'd been stupid enough to fall in love with someone from a different universe. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello, Ms. Carter. My name is Detective Park Ji-hoon. I work in the Organized Crime Division of the Seoul Metropolitan Police. I need to speak with you about Kang Dojin." Nyla's hand tightened on the phone. "I have nothing to say." "I think you do. I think you're a smart woman who's gotten involved with a very dangerous man. And I think you might be the key to finally bringing down the Kang Empire." I'm hanging up. "Wait, please. I'm not trying to threaten you. I'm trying to help you. Do you know how many people Kang Dojin has killed? Do you know what he's done to maintain his power? I have files, Ms. Carter. Evidence, photographs, testimony from people who were brave enough to talk before they disappeared. Then arrest him. We can't touch him. He's too connected, too careful. Every time we get close, witnesses vanish. Evidence disappears. But you're different. You're the person he cares about, which means you're the weakness we've been waiting for." Nyla felt sick. "You want me to betray him. I want you to survive. Because women who get involved with men like Kang Dojin don't survive. They become collateral damage. They end up dead or destroyed or so broken they can't remember who they used to be. I've seen it happen dozens of times. I don't want to add your name to that list." "Why do you care?" Detective Park was quiet for a moment. "Because 3 years ago, my sister dated a mid-level enforcer in the Kang organization. He seemed nice, treated her well. Then she witnessed something she shouldn't have seen, and they killed her to keep her quiet. Made it look like suicide. I've been trying to bring them down ever since. I'm sorry about your sister, but I'm not going to help you. You're protecting a killer. I'm protecting someone I love. Love doesn't excuse murder, Ms. Carter. It doesn't erase the bodies. It doesn't bring back the people he's destroyed. You can tell yourself he's different with you, that you see a side of him nobody else sees, but that doesn't change what he is. Nyla ended the call with shaking hands. Sat on the couch staring at nothing while doubt carved itself deeper into her chest. Was she really just rationalizing, making excuses for someone who hurt people? Was love enough to justify staying with someone whose hands were stained with blood she'd never see? The door opened. Dojin stepped inside looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 hours. "You're back," she said. "I told you I wouldn't let you out of my sight." He sat beside her, exhaustion written across every line of his face, blood on his knuckles that he hadn't bothered to wash off. "Did you kill him?" Nyla asked quietly. "No, but I wanted to. Every instinct I have screamed to put a bullet in his head and be done with it. But I didn't, because you asked me not to become a monster. Someone called me, a detective, Park Ji-hoon. He told me about your sister." Dojin went very still. "I don't have a sister." His sister. "He said she was killed by your organization 3 years ago." "What else did he say?" "That I'm the weakness they've been waiting for. That I could help them bring you down. That women who love men like you don't survive." Dojin turned to look at her, something raw and desperate in his eyes. "What did you tell him?" "That I wasn't going to help him. But Dojin, I need to know. Did your people kill his sister?" "I don't know. 3 years ago my father was still alive. Still running operations I wasn't cleared to know about. If she was killed, it was his call, not mine." "But you inherited that empire. You took over those same operations, which means you're responsible for everything that came before." "Yes." "How do you live with that?" "Badly." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I'm not going to lie to you and say I'm innocent. I've done things that would horrify you, given orders that resulted in people getting hurt, made decisions that prioritized power over morality. That's who I am. That's what I was built to be. And now I'm trying to be something different. But I don't know if people like me get second chances. I don't know if wanting to be better is enough to erase what I've done." Nyla looked at their joined hands, his scarred knuckles against her calloused fingers. Two people from different worlds trying to build something impossible. "A cop told me I'm going to end up dead if I stay with you. My mother thinks you're going to get me killed. Your enemies are threatening my family. Every logical part of me says I should run. So why can't I? Because you're stubborn and brave and too kind for your own good. Or just stupid. Never that." She leaned against him, felt his arm wrap around her shoulders, felt safe even though safety was probably an illusion in his world. "What happens now?" she asked. "I gave the Yoon Syndicate an ultimatum, 24 hours to leave Seoul. If they're still here tomorrow night, this becomes a war. Can you win? Probably, but wars are expensive, people die, operations get exposed, law enforcement gets involved. It's not a clean solution." "Is there a clean solution?" "Not anymore." They sat in heavy silence. Outside the bulletproof windows, Seoul continued its oblivious existence. Millions of people living normal lives, completely unaware of the violence brewing beneath the surface. Nyla's phone buzzed again. Text message. Unknown number. She opened it. Another photo. This time it was her. Walking out of the convenience store near her apartment. Recent. From earlier that evening before Kwan had picked her up. Below it, "We're always watching." Dojin saw. Took the phone from her. His expression went flat. "They're not backing down." "What do we do?" He stood abruptly. Paced the apartment like a caged animal. "I end this tonight. Before they escalate further." "You said you gave them 24 hours. "I changed my mind." "Dojin." "They're following you, photographing you, threatening your mother. They've made it clear they're not going to stop until they've used you to destroy me. So I'm going to destroy them first. That's not strategy, that's emotion." He spun to face her. And for the first time since she'd known him, Kang Dojin looked truly desperate. You're right. This is emotion. This is me being weak. This is everything my father warned me about. But I don't care anymore. Because the alternative is waiting for them to hurt you. And I can't do that. I won't. So you're going to start a war, if that's what it takes. Nyla stood, crossed to him, put her hands on his chest and felt his heart racing beneath expensive fabric. What if there's another way? There isn't. What if I leave? What if I go back to Chicago and we just stop? Would they leave us alone? Pain flashed across his face. You'd do that? I do a lot of things to keep you from becoming something you'll hate yourself for. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Running doesn't work. They'll still use you as leverage even if you're gone. The only way to keep you safe is to eliminate the threat completely. By killing people. Yes. And that doesn't bother you? It used to, when I was younger, before my father trained the hesitation out of me. Now it's just calculation, risk versus reward, threat assessment. I don't lose sleep over men who chose this life. But what about the people around them, the families, the innocents who get caught in the crossfire? Dojin pulled back to look at her face. That's why I need you, to remind me that those people matter, that collateral damage isn't just statistics, that there's supposed to be a line I don't cross. Where's that line? Right now, it's you. Everything on your side of that line is worth protecting. Everything on the other side is expendable. The simplicity of his logic was terrifying, and somehow, inexplicably, she understood it. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. What are we going to do? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He checked the screen, answered immediately. Talk to me. Nyla watched his expression shift from concern to shock to something that looked like the floor had just dropped out from under him. Are you certain? Pause. How long have you known? Another pause. I'm coming there now. He hung up, looked at Nyla with eyes that had gone completely hollow. What happened? She asked. We need to go. Right now. Dojin, you're scaring me. I just got confirmation on something. Information about the Yoon Syndicate's move against us. Where it came from. Who provided them with details about you, about your mother, about everywhere you go. Nyla's stomach dropped. Who? Someone close to me. Someone I trusted. Someone who's been feeding them information for months. Who? Dojin's jaw clenched so tight she could see muscles jumping beneath the skin. Seo Yuna. The woman who's been pursuing you. Yes, she's the daughter of Lee Sang-woo, one of my father's oldest business partners. I've known her family my entire life, trusted them with operational details, financial information, territory distribution. And apparently she's been selling everything to the Yoon Syndicate in revenge for me rejecting her. Nyla felt the world tilt sideways. She betrayed you because you wouldn't date her? It's worse than that. She didn't just sell information. She orchestrated the entire situation. She's the one who leaked photos of us to the press. She's the one who told Kim Jae-won about your mother. She's been systematically dismantling my life because I chose you instead of her. How long has this been happening? According to my source, since the night I had dinner with you in Hongdae. The moment she realized I was seeing someone, she went to the Yoon Syndicate and offered them everything they needed to destroy me. Nyla sat down heavily. So this is my fault. If I hadn't gone to dinner with you, don't! Dojin knelt in front of her, gripped her hands. This is not your fault. This is Yuna choosing revenge over loyalty. This is the Yoon Syndicate choosing violence. None of this is on you. But if I wasn't at the picture, then I'd still be empty. Still be the weapon my father built. Still be dying slowly inside a life that felt like a prison. You didn't cause this, Nyla. You just gave me a reason to finally care about something other than survival. She looked at his face, saw the rage beneath the control, saw the violence he was barely containing. What are you going to do to her? What I should have done months ago, remove the threat. You're going to kill her. Yes. Dojin, she endangered you. She put your mother in danger. She betrayed my family's organization to our worst enemies. In my world, that's a death sentence. There's no negotiation, no mercy. And if I ask you not to? He was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if showing her mercy is what gets you killed. Nyla felt tears burn behind her eyes. This was the reality. This was what loving him actually meant. Not romantic dinners and gentle conversations, blood and violence and impossible choices. I need some air, she said quietly. You can't leave this apartment. It's not safe. Then I need you to leave. Just for a few minutes, please. I need to think. Pain flashed across his face. You're going to leave me. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need space to figure it out. Dojin stood slowly, looked at her like he was trying to memorize her features, like he knew this might be the last time he saw her choose to stay. I'll be outside with Kwan. If you need anything, if you change your mind about any of this. He paused at the door. I love you. That doesn't change regardless of what you decide. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Nyla sat alone in the safe house, staring at her hands while her entire world crumbled around her. This was it. The moment where she had to choose. Stay with Dojin and accept that her life would always include violence, that people would die because of their relationship, that she would become complicit in things she'd spent her whole life believing were wrong, or leave. Go back to Chicago, build a normal life with a normal person who didn't have blood on their hands. Be safe. Be free. Be everything her mother wanted for her. Both options felt like death. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't open it, almost deleted it without looking. But something made her check. The message contained a video file. She pressed play. The footage was grainy, security camera quality, dated 3 years ago according to the timestamp in the corner. It showed a young woman leaving a restaurant in Gangnam. She was laughing, holding hands with a man in his 30s. They walked to a car parked on the street. 3 minutes later, a black van pulled up beside them. 4 men got out. There was a brief struggle. The woman was dragged into the van. The man tried to fight back. One of the masked men shot him twice in the chest. The van drove away. The man bled out on the sidewalk while pedestrians ran. The woman was Park Ji-hoon's sister. And in the bottom corner of the screen, barely visible, was a license plate Nyla recognized. She'd seen that same plate on the cars that transported Dojin. Her hands started shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. Below the video was a single line of text. He's been lying to you. He knows exactly who killed her because he gave the order. The world tilted, spun, crashed. Nyla couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she'd just seen. The door opened. Dojin stepped back inside. I forgot my... He stopped, saw her face. What's wrong? She held up the phone, let him see the paused video, watched every drop of color drain from his face. Nyla, shh. Did you kill her? Her voice came out flat. Dead. Detective Park's sister. Did you give the order to have her murdered? It's complicated. That's not a no. Dojin moved toward her. She backed away. Don't come near me. Just answer the question. Did you kill her? He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were full of anguish. Yes. The word hung between them like a knife. Why? She witnessed a meeting. Between my father and a politician, we had leverage over. She saw money exchange hands, heard names, understood implications. My father said she was a threat to the organization, that if she talked to police, it would unravel years of carefully built connections. He ordered me to handle it. And you just did it? You just killed an innocent woman because your father told you to? I was 26 years old. I'd been running the family business for less than a year. My father was testing me, seeing if I had what it took to make the hard calls, to prioritize the organization over individual lives. I didn't want to do it. I argued, tried to find another solution, but he made it clear. Either I gave the order, or he'd question my ability to lead, so I gave the order. And her boyfriend, the man they shot? Collateral damage, wrong place, wrong time. He tried to protect her. Nyla felt bile rise in her throat. You watched me struggle with whether to stay with you. You let me believe you were just someone trying to be better. You held me and told me you loved me. And the entire time you knew you'd murdered an innocent woman in cold blood. I was trying to protect you from that part of my past. By lying to me? By not burying you under the weight of decisions I can't take back. Yes, I gave that order. Yes, an innocent woman died because I prioritized the Empire over her life. And yes, I've regretted it every single day since. But telling you wouldn't change what happened. It would just make you see me as the monster everyone else sees. You are the monster everyone else sees. The words hit him like bullets. She watched something break behind his eyes. I know, he said quietly. I've always known. I was just hoping you'd see something else. Something worth saving. How many others? Her voice was shaking. How many other innocent people have you killed? I don't know. I stopped counting after the first year. Nyla backed toward the door, every instinct screaming to run, to get away from this man who'd lied to her face while holding her heart. Where are you going? Dojin asked. Anywhere but here. Nyla, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you're exactly what everyone warned me about? That I was too naive and stupid to see it? That I fell in love with a killer who's been lying to me since the beginning? I never lied about loving you. But you lied about everything else. She grabbed her jacket. You let me believe you were trying to be better. That you weren't as bad as the rumors said. That loving me made you want to change, but you can't change. Because you are violence, you are death, and I'm done pretending otherwise. She reached for the door handle. It was locked. Let me out. Not until we talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You killed an innocent woman and lied about it. That's not complicated. That's unforgivable. So what, you're just going to leave? Run back to Chicago and pretend these last 2 months didn't happen? Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And what about the threats? What about the Yoon Syndicate? They're not going to stop coming after you just because you leave me. Then that's my problem to handle, not yours. Nyla, unlock the door. Right now. Or I start screaming for Kwan. Dojin stared at her for a long moment. She watched him wrestle with the urge to refuse, to keep her here by force, to use his power to override her choice. Then something in his expression shifted to resignation. He pulled out his phone, sent a text. The door unlocked with a soft click. If you walk out that door, I can't protect you anymore. I don't want your protection. I want to never have met you. She saw the words destroy him, saw his careful control crack apart, saw the man beneath the monster surface for just a second, desperate and broken and completely in love with someone who'd just rejected him. But she couldn't care. Couldn't let herself feel sympathy for someone who'd murdered an innocent woman and then lied about it for months. She opened the door. Kwan stood in the hallway looking confused. Ms. Carter, take me to the nearest subway station. I can't do that without Mr. Kang's authorization. Then call the police because I'm leaving one way or another. Kwan looked past her to where Dojin stood in the apartment doorway looking like the world had just ended. Sir? Dojin's voice came out hollow, destroyed. Let her go. Sir, the threats... I said, let her go. Kwan hesitated, then nodded. This way, Ms. Carter. Nyla followed him down the hallway without looking back. Didn't let herself turn around. Didn't let herself second guess. She'd fallen in love with a killer, and the only way to survive was to run. The subway platform was nearly empty at 2 a.m. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A drunk businessman slumped against a pillar. Somewhere down the tunnel, a train approached with the distant rumble of metal on metal. Nyla stood alone near the platform edge, jacket pulled tight against the night chill that had followed her underground. Kwan had dropped her at the station entrance without a word, just a look that said she was making a terrible mistake. Maybe she was. But staying felt worse. Her phone buzzed constantly, texts from Dojin that she deleted without reading, calls she declined. She couldn't hear his voice right now, couldn't let him talk her into believing his lies were somehow justified. An innocent woman was dead because of him. That truth erased everything else. The train pulled into the station. Doors hissed open. Nyla stepped inside an empty car and collapsed into a seat, adrenaline finally draining from her system and leaving behind exhaustion so complete she could barely hold her head up. She'd go to her apartment, pack essentials, use what money she had left to buy a ticket back to Chicago, start over, again. Like she'd done when the teaching contract fell through. Like she'd done a dozen times before when life went sideways. Except this time felt different. This time felt like running away from the only person who'd ever made her feel seen. Stop it, she told herself. He's a murderer. He lied to you. He killed an innocent woman and then held you while pretending to be someone worth loving. But a quieter voice whispered back, "He told you what he was. He tried to warn you. You chose to stay anyway." The train lurched forward. Nyla closed her eyes and tried not to think about the look on Dojin's face when she'd said she wished she'd never met him. 3 stops later, she got off at her station, climbed the stairs to street level. The neighborhood was quiet, dark. A few scattered lights in apartment windows where insomniacs and shift workers lived their backward schedules. She was halfway to her building when she noticed the car, black sedan, engine running, parked in a spot that had clear sightlines to her apartment entrance. Every instinct Dojin had tried to teach her about threat assessment suddenly screamed danger. She kept walking, tried to look casual, pulled out her phone like she was texting someone, took a photo of the car's license plate without breaking stride. The car door opened. Kim Jae-won stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than her rent. 2 more men emerged from the back seat, big, armed, the kind of muscle that didn't need to announce itself. "Ms. Carter, out for a late-night walk?" Nyla stopped, measured the distance to her apartment, too far. Measured the distance back to the subway, also too far. There was nowhere to run that they couldn't catch her. "What do you want?" "Just to talk. About your relationship with Kang Dojin. About opportunities you might not have considered." "I'm not interested." "You should be, because right now you're the most valuable person in Seoul. The woman who broke the Ice King's heart. The weakness everyone's been searching for. Do you understand what that means?" "It means you're going to try to use me against him." Kim Jae-won smiled. "Very perceptive. You're smarter than I expected, which makes this easier. Get in the car, Ms. Carter. We're going to have a conversation about your future, and his. And if I refuse, then my associates will put you in the car anyway, but I'd prefer this to be civilized." Nyla looked at the 2 bodyguards, looked at the empty street, looked at her phone and wondered if calling the police would even matter. The police in Seoul operated in layers. Some layers could be bought. She had no idea which ones the Yoon Syndicate owned. She thought about Dojin's warnings, about staying close to protection, about how leaving him made her vulnerable. She'd been so focused on the betrayal that she'd forgotten the part where walking away didn't actually make her safe. "One question first," she said. "Did you send me that video? The one of Park Ji-hoon's sister being killed?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you needed to understand who you were really involved with. Because sometimes the truth is more effective than threats. And because watching you destroy him from the inside was more satisfying than anything I could do externally." Nyla felt something cold settle in her chest. "You orchestrated this, the photos, the threats. You wanted me to find out about her. You wanted me to leave him." "Of course. A man in love is reckless, predictable. But a man with a broken heart? That's when mistakes happen. That's when empires crumble." So this was never about territory. It was about destroying him personally. The territory is just business, but making Kang Dojin suffer? That's personal. He killed my brother 5 years ago in a dispute over shipping routes, shot him in the head, and dumped his body in the Han River. I've been waiting for an opportunity to return the favor. Then you appeared, and suddenly the great Ice King had something to lose. Nyla's hands curled into fists. "I'm not a weapon you get to use." "You already are. Get in the car, Ms. Carter, or I'll have my men break your legs and throw you in. Your choice." She was out of options, out of allies, out of the protection she'd rejected, and she had no one to blame but herself. She got in the car. And Mites. Dojin stood in his office staring at his phone like it might spontaneously deliver good news. It didn't. Just 17 unread messages, all marked delivered. None answered. She was gone. Really gone. And he'd let her walk away because forcing her to stay would have proven everything she believed about him. Kwon appeared in the doorway. "Sir, we have a problem. Unless it's about Nyla's location, I don't want to hear it. It's about her location." Dojin's head snapped up. "Where is she?" "Surveillance shows she got off the train at her station 20 minutes ago. Started walking toward her apartment. Then a car approached. Kim Jae-won's car. She got inside with him. The world stopped. Everything went very quiet and very cold. She got in willingly? Appeared to be under duress. 3 men. At least 2 were armed based on jacket profiles. Dojin's hands were shaking, actually shaking. He pressed them flat against his desk to make it stop. They took her. Yes, sir. Because I let her leave unprotected. Sir, I let her leave. His voice cracked. The control he'd spent a lifetime building shattered completely. He swept everything off his desk in one violent motion. Papers, computer, phone, everything crashed to the floor. I let her walk out because I thought giving her space was the right thing to do. Because I thought respecting her choice mattered more than keeping her safe. And now they have her because of me. Kwon waited until the storm passed. What are your orders? Dojin straightened slowly. When he spoke again, his voice was empty. Flat. The voice of someone who'd stopped caring about consequences. Call everyone. Every soldier, every enforcer, every person who owes the Kang family a favor. I want Kim Jae-won's location within the hour. And when we find him, I'm going to kill every single person who touched her. Then I'm going to burn the Yoon Syndicate to the ground. Then I'm going to make an example so brutal that no one in Seoul ever threatens someone I love again. Sir, that will start a war that brings law enforcement down on every operation we have. I don't care. Let them come. Let the police come. Let the prosecutors come. Let everyone who's been waiting for me to make a mistake finally get their chance. Because I'm done being careful. I'm done playing politics. They took the only thing in my life that mattered. Now they get to learn what happens when you push me past the point of strategy. Kwon had served the Kang family for 15 years. Had seen Dojin grow from a reluctant heir into the most feared operator in Seoul. Had watched him make ruthless decisions without hesitation. But he'd never seen him like this, stripped of control, operating purely on rage and grief. We'll find her, sir. We better, because if anything happens to her, I'm holding everyone responsible, including myself. They drove Nyla to a warehouse in an industrial area south of the river, the kind of place that probably saw illegal activity so regularly that neighbors had learned to ignore strange sounds and unmarked vehicles. Inside, the space had been converted into something between an office and a command center. Computers, maps, armed guards stationed at every entrance. This wasn't a temporary setup. This was operational infrastructure. Kim Jae-won led her to a metal chair in the center of the room, gestured for her to sit. She did, because fighting 3 armed men seemed like a good way to get hurt before she understood what was happening. Comfortable? He asked. Not really. I apologize for the accommodations, but this won't take long. I just need you to make a phone call. To who? Kang Dojin, you're going to tell him that you've realized you made a mistake, that you want to see him, that you're at your apartment and need him to come alone. Nyla laughed, actually laughed. The sound echoed in the warehouse like broken glass. You think he's stupid enough to fall for that? I think he's in love with you, which makes him exactly that stupid. Even if I make the call, he'll know it's a trap. He'll hear it in my voice. He'll bring an army. Then you'll need to be convincing, because if he doesn't come alone, I start sending him pieces of you until he does. The casual way he said it made her stomach turn. You're going to torture me to get to him. Only if necessary. I'm hoping you'll be reasonable. Make the call. Lure him here. Let me finish what he started 5 years ago when he killed my brother. In exchange, you walk away alive. Maybe even with enough money to start over somewhere safe. And if I refuse? Kim Jae-won pulled out a gun, set it on the table between them with deliberate care. Then I hurt you until you agree. I'm patient, Ms. Carter, but I'm not kind. This ends one of 2 ways. Either you cooperate and survive, or you resist and suffer. Choose carefully. Nyla looked at the gun, looked at his face, saw no mercy there, no negotiation, just cold calculation dressed up as business. How do I know you'll let me go if I cooperate? You don't. But what's your alternative? Die here tonight for a man who's killed innocent people? Who lied to you for months? Who let you walk away unprotected, knowing exactly how dangerous that was? She wanted to argue, wanted to defend Dojin, but every word Kim Jae-won spoke was true. Dojin had let her leave, had known the risks, had chosen to respect her decision over keeping her safe. And now she was paying the price. Give me the phone, she said quietly. Kim Jae-won smiled, handed her a burner phone with Dojin's number already programmed. Remember, convincing, or this gets much worse. Nyla took the phone with shaking hands, stared at the number on the screen. 1 call. That's all it would take to lure him into a trap. to be complicit in his death, to become exactly the weapon Kim Jae-won wanted to use. But what choice did she have? Die here for refusing, or make the call and hope Dojin was smart enough to see through it? She pressed dial. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, he answered. Nyla. His voice cracked on her name, raw, desperate. Where are you? Are you hurt? Kim Jae-won held up 3 fingers. 3 sentences. That's all she got. I'm at my apartment, she forced out. I made a mistake leaving. Can you come? Alone? Silence on the other end. Long enough that she knew he understood. Nyla, are you in danger right now? Kim Jae-won shook his head, gestured to one of his men. The man moved behind her. She felt cold metal press against the back of her skull. Please just come, she whispered. I need you. More silence. Then, I'm coming. Stay on the line with me. I can't. Just hurry. She hung up before he could respond, before the gun against her head made her say something that would get them both killed. Kim Jae-won took the phone back. Well done. Very convincing. Now we wait. He won't come alone. Then you'll die, and he'll spend the rest of his very short life regretting that decision. Nyla closed her eyes, tried to slow her racing heart, tried to think of a way out that didn't end with everyone dead. She couldn't find one. Dojin stood in the middle of his office, surrounded by 20 of his best soldiers. Kwon had mobilized everyone within 30 minutes. They were armed, ready, waiting for orders. She's not at her apartment, Dojin said quietly. That was a trap. Kim Jae-won has her somewhere, and he's using her to draw me out. Then we don't go, Kwon said. We find his location and hit him with everything we have. We don't have time. You heard her voice. She's terrified. Every minute we wait is another minute they could be hurting her. So what's the play? Dojin was quiet for a long moment. Then, I go. Alone. Like he asked. That's suicide. Probably, but it's the only way to guarantee she stays alive long enough for you to extract her. You're not thinking clearly. You're letting emotion override strategy. You're right. I'm not thinking clearly. Because the woman I love is being held hostage by people who want to torture her to get to me. So I'm going to give them what they want. I'm going to walk in there and let them take their shot. And while they're focused on me, you're going to get her out. And if we can't get her out before they kill you, then you burn that warehouse to the ground with everyone inside. No survivors. No mercy. Make it a message that lasts generations. Kwon studied him carefully. You're really willing to die for her? Without hesitation. Your father would be ashamed. My father is dead, and I'm done living by his rules. Dojin grabbed a jacket, checked his sidearm. I need 40 minutes to get in position and draw their attention. Then you breach. Understood? Understood. And Kwon? If I don't make it out, everything goes to you. The empire, the operations, all of it. Run it better than I did. Run it like someone who remembers that people aren't just assets. Yes, sir. Dojin took one last look at his office, at the empire his father had built and he'd inherited, at the life he'd never wanted but had learned to navigate. Then he walked out to trade it all for a woman who'd broken his heart 6 hours ago. Bums. Kim Jae-won's phone buzzed. He checked the message and smiled. He's coming, alone, like I knew he would. Nyla felt her stomach drop. You're going to kill him. Eventually, but first I'm going to make him watch what happens to people he loves. I'm going to make him suffer the way I suffered when he killed my brother. Then, when he's broken completely, I'll put a bullet in his head. He's going to kill you first. With what? He's coming unarmed to a building full of my soldiers. He's smart enough to know that any sign of weapons or backup means you die immediately. So he'll walk in here defenseless because he's chosen emotion over strategy. And that's when I win. One of the guards called from the door. Car approaching. Single occupant. Matches the description. Kim Jae-won stood, straightened his jacket. Showtime. Let's see if the Great Ice King bleeds like everyone else. The warehouse door opened. Dojin walked in alone. No jacket. No visible weapons. Hands raised slightly to show he was unarmed. But his eyes were cold, lethal. The eyes of someone who'd already accepted death and was just deciding how many people to take with him. He scanned the warehouse, found Nyla tied to the chair in the center. Their eyes met across the distance. I'm here, he said, voice flat. Empty. Let her go. Kim Jae-won laughed. You think I'm going to honor some imaginary deal? You think walking in here unarmed makes you noble? You're just prey, Dojin, and I've been hunting you for 5 years. Then let's finish this. Between us. Leave her out of it. She is this. She's the weapon I've been looking for, the thing that finally breaks you. Dojin took a step forward. 6 guns immediately tracked him. One more step and my men open fire, Kim Jae-won warned. Then fire. But you'll never get another chance like this. I'm standing right here, defenseless. Everything you wanted. Take your revenge. Just let her walk out first. Why would I do that? Because deep down, you're still the brother who protected his family, who fought wars over loyalty, who understood honor even in a world without it. My father killed your brother over business. That was wrong. I inherited that sin. I accept responsibility, but she's innocent. She doesn't deserve to die because of choices we made. Kim Jae-won studied him. You really love her. More than I've ever loved anything. Good. Then you understand exactly what I'm about to take from you. He pulled out a gun, pointed it at Nyla. Everything happened in slow motion. Dojin moved, somehow impossibly fast despite 6 guns trained on him, somehow impossibly precise despite knowing he was dead the moment he acted. He hit Kim Jae-won from the side. The gun discharged. The bullet went wide. Then the warehouse erupted in gunfire. Nyla screamed, threw herself sideways, still tied to the chair, hit the concrete hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Through the chaos and noise and smoke, she saw Dojin fighting 3 men at once, saw him take a bullet to the shoulder and keep moving, saw him break someone's neck with his bare hands. Then the far wall exploded inward. Kwon and 15 Kang soldiers breached through smoke and violence. The gunfight became a slaughter. Yoon Syndicate soldiers fell, returned fire, died trying to hold a position that was already lost. Someone cut Nyla free. She couldn't tell who. Everything was noise and movement and terror. Then Dojin was there, blood streaming from his shoulder, face pale from blood loss, but alive, moving, pulling her toward the breach point while Kwon's team covered their exit. Can you run? He gasped. Yes. Then run. Don't stop. Don't look back. They ran, through smoke and corpses and the aftermath of violence she'd never imagined, outside to where cars waited with engines running. Someone pushed her into a back seat. Dojin collapsed beside her. The car accelerated before the doors fully closed. Nyla looked at him, at the blood soaking through his shirt, at the pain carved into his features, at the man who'd walked into a death trap alone because he loved her more than he valued his own life. You came for me, she whispered. Always. His eyes were starting to lose focus. I'm sorry for lying, for the woman I killed, for everything. But I'm not sorry for loving you. Dojin, stay awake, please. We're going to get you to a hospital. Not a hospital. Too many questions. Private doctor. Kwon knows where. His eyes closed. Dojin. Kwon turned from the front seat. He'll live. The bullet went through clean. But Ms. Carter, we need to talk about what happens next. Because what just went down? That's going to bring war. The Yoon Syndicate will retaliate. Law enforcement will investigate. Everything's about to become very loud and very public. You need to decide right now if you're staying or leaving. Nyla looked at the man bleeding beside her. The man who'd lied to her. Who'd killed people. Who'd let her walk away and then risked everything to save her anyway. The man she still loved despite knowing exactly what he was. I'm staying, she said. You understand what that means? You become part of this, part of him, part of everything. I understand. Then hold pressure on that wound, and welcome to the Empire, Ms. Carter. It's going to be a hell of a ride. The car disappeared into Seoul's pre-dawn streets while behind them, sirens began to wail. The private doctor worked in a clinic buried 3 floors beneath a restaurant in Gangnam, the kind of place that didn't exist on any official records, where bullet wounds got treated without questions and patients paid in cash that never appeared on tax forms. Nyla sat in a waiting room that smelled like antiseptic and old coffee, while a surgeon she'd never met worked on Dojin behind closed doors. Kwon stood guard by the entrance. 2 more soldiers positioned themselves at the stairs, everyone on high alert because the violence from the warehouse would have consequences neither side could control. Her hands were still shaking, still covered in Dojin's blood, despite washing them twice in the small bathroom down the hall. She kept seeing the moment the gun went off, kept hearing the sound of his body hitting concrete, kept reliving the certainty that she was about to watch him die because he'd chosen saving her over surviving. The door opened. The doctor emerged pulling off surgical gloves. Middle-aged woman, tired eyes. The look of someone who'd seen too much violence to be surprised by more. He'll live. Bullet passed through the shoulder cleanly, missed major arteries. He lost blood, but nothing critical. I've stitched him up and given him antibiotics. He needs rest. 2 weeks minimum. No strenuous activity. Nyla felt something unclench in her chest. Can I see him? He's unconscious. Anesthesia will take a few hours to wear off. But yes, just don't expect conversation. She followed the doctor into a small recovery room. Dojin lay on a medical table with his torso wrapped in bandages, pale, still, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. The great Ice King reduced to flesh and blood and pain. Nyla pulled a chair beside the table, took his hand carefully, felt his pulse beating steady beneath her fingers.
"You stupid, reckless, self-destructive idiot," she whispered. "You could have died. You should have died. You walked into that warehouse knowing they'd probably kill you, and you did it anyway." He didn't respond, just kept breathing, kept existing, kept being alive against odds that should have buried him.
I'm still angry at you, she continued, for lying, for killing that woman, for letting me believe you were better than you actually are. But I'm also angry at myself, for running away, for not listening when you tried to warn me, for being so focused on your sins that I forgot about the reality of what leaving you actually meant. She pressed his hand to her forehead, let tears she'd been holding finally fall. I don't know how to love someone like you. I don't know how to reconcile the man who holds me like I'm precious with the man who orders people killed. I don't know how to be with someone who lives in violence while trying to hold on to whatever humanity I have left. But I'm tired of running. I'm tired of pretending I can survive in your world without becoming part of it. So if you wake up and still want me, I'm staying. All in. No more halfway. Quan cleared his throat from the doorway. Ms. Carter, we have a situation. She wiped her eyes. What kind of situation? The kind where we need to move him, now. Police are investigating the warehouse. They've identified bodies. They're going to start connecting dots that lead back to Kang Enterprises within hours. We need to get him somewhere secure before law enforcement gets involved. He just had surgery. I know, but staying here is more dangerous than moving him. The Yoon Syndicate knows about this clinic. It's only a matter of time before they send people to finish what Kim Jae-won started. Is Kim Jae-won dead? Kwan's expression went flat. He got out during the firefight, wounded but alive, which means this isn't over. It's just beginning. Nyla looked at Dojin's unconscious face, at the man who'd traded his empire's stability for her life, at the choice she'd just made to stay. Where do we take him? Somewhere nobody knows about, off the grid. I have a location prepared, but Miss Carter, once we leave this clinic, you don't get to change your mind. You're committed. You understand? I understand. Do you? Because this isn't romantic. This is survival. This is blood and violence and decisions that will haunt you. This is watching the man you love become the monster everyone fears because that's what survival requires. Are you really ready for that? Nyla met his eyes. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Kwan nodded slowly. Then help me get him to the car. They moved Dojin to a safe house 2 hours outside Seoul. Rural area. Mountains. A traditional hanok hidden in forest where cell service was spotty and visitors were non-existent. The kind of place designed for hiding when empires started crumbling. For 3 days, Dojin drifted in and out of consciousness while his body fought infection and blood loss. Nyla stayed beside him, changed bandages, monitored fever, forced water and medication down his throat when he was lucid enough to swallow. Kwan brought updates from the city. The warehouse massacre had made national news. 14 dead. Multiple agencies investigating. The Kang Empire's name hadn't surfaced yet, but pressure was building. Rival organizations were testing boundaries. Government officials were making public statements about cracking down on organized crime. Everything Dojin had built was threatening to collapse because he'd chosen one woman over strategic thinking. On the 4th morning, he woke fully. Eyes clear. Mind sharp. Found Nyla asleep in a chair beside his bed, head resting on folded arms,
looking exhausted. "Nyla," he said quietly. She jerked awake, saw him watching her. Relief and anger crashed across her face simultaneously. "You're awake." Apparently. He tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his shoulder. He gasped and fell back against the pillows. "Don't move. Doctor said 2 weeks before you can do anything strenuous. And even then, you're going to have limited mobility for months." "How long have I been out?" 4 days. "You've been fighting infection. Fever spiked twice. We almost had to take you back to the clinic." Dojin closed his eyes. "Where are we?" "Safe house. Mountains. Quan said nobody knows about this location." "Quan's here?" "Outside, with 6 guards. Everyone's on edge because apparently the Yun Syndicate is still operational and very angry." "Kim Jae-won?" "Alive. Wounded. In hiding. But making threats through back channels. Quan says the underworld is waiting to see how you respond. If you don't retaliate, they'll see it as weakness. And if I do retaliate, law enforcement will come down on everyone." Dojin opened his eyes, looked at her carefully. "You stayed." "I stayed." "Why?" "Because I'm apparently just as self-destructive as you are." She reached for his hand, held it gently. "Because watching you almost die made me realize that being angry about your past matters less than figuring out if we have a future, because I love you. Even though I shouldn't. Even though it's going to cost me everything I thought I wanted. Even though you're exactly as dangerous as everyone warned me. I don't deserve you. No, you don't. But I'm here anyway." Dojin studied her face, saw the exhaustion, the fear, the determination beneath both. "What do you need from me? What would make this possible?" Nyla was quiet for a long moment. "The truth. All of it. No more lies. No more protection through ignorance. If I'm staying in this world, I need to understand it completely. Every choice you make, every order you give, every consequence that follows. I can't be your innocent girlfriend who you shelter from reality. I have to be your partner, or this doesn't work. Partners means you become complicit in things you'll hate. I know. Partners means blood on your hands even if you never pull a trigger. I know that too. Partners means the woman you were when you arrived in Seoul dies, and someone harder takes her place." Nyla squeezed his hand. "Then I guess we're killing her together. Because I can't go back to pretending I'm not in love with a monster. And you can't keep pretending you're not trying to be better. So we figure out the space between those two truths, and we survive there." Dojin pulled her closer with his good arm, kissed her forehead, tasted salt and fear and commitment. "You're going to regret this," he whispered. "Probably. But I'm tired of being careful. Teach me how to survive in your world." "That's a dangerous request." "Good. I'm done being safe." Over the next 2 weeks, while Dojin healed, Quan brought war to the Yun Syndicate. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't visible, just systematic dismantling of infrastructure that had taken years to build. Supply lines disrupted. Key operatives turned or disappeared. Financial accounts frozen through connections Quan had spent decades cultivating. Political allies suddenly finding reasons to distance themselves from anyone connected to Kim Jae-won's organization. The underworld called it the Silent War. No shootouts, no headlines. Just the slow, professional destruction of an organization that had made the mistake of targeting something Kang Dojin loved. Nyla watched it happen from the safe house, listened to Quan's reports, learned the language of violence dressed up as business, learned how empires fell not through dramatic battles, but through careful pressure applied to weak points until structures collapsed from within. She also learned about the woman Dojin had killed. Park Soo-jin, 24 years old, art student. Sister to a detective who'd been trying to bring down the Kong Empire for years. She'd been at the wrong restaurant at the wrong time and witnessed a transaction that would have unraveled political connections worth millions. Dojin told her everything, the order his father gave, the arguments he made trying to find alternatives. The moment he realized refusing meant his father would question his leadership. The cold calculation that sacrificed one life to protect thousands of other operations. "I could tell you I didn't want to do it," he said one evening while they sat on the porch watching sunset paint the mountains gold. "I could tell you I agonized over the decision. But the truth is I made the call in under an hour, weighed the cost-benefit,
decided the organization mattered more than one person, and I've lived with that choice every day since. Do you regret it? Nyla asked. I regret that it was necessary. I regret living in a world where that kind of math makes sense. But do I regret choosing the Empire over her life? I don't know anymore. Before I met you, I would have said no. Strategy is strategy. But now I understand what Detective Park lost. I understand the hole that kind of violence leaves, and I know that if someone took you from me the way I took his sister from him, I'd burn the world to ashes trying to get revenge. Does that make you a better person? Understanding the pain you caused? No, it just makes me more aware of being a bad one. Nyla leaned against his good shoulder. I don't know how to forgive you for what you did to her. I'm not asking you to. But I'm staying anyway. Does that make me complicit? Yes. But complicity is just another word for choosing someone despite their sins. Everyone does it. They just pretend they don't when the sins are more visible than tax evasion or environmental destruction or profiting off systems that hurt people they'll never meet. That's not absolution. I know. I'm just saying none of us are clean. We just get to choose which dirt we're willing to live with. They sat in silence while darkness crept through the mountains, and somewhere in Seoul, Kwon continued dismantling the organization that had threatened them. 3 weeks after the warehouse, Kim Jae-won made his move. It came through an intermediary, a neutral party respected by both sides. An offer for negotiation, terms for ending the conflict before it consumed everything both organizations had built. The meeting was set for neutral ground, a restaurant owned by someone with no allegiances, public enough to discourage violence, private enough for honest conversation. Dojin's shoulder was mostly healed, still stiff, still painful, but functional. He dressed carefully. Suit that concealed body armor, gun holstered where he could reach it with his good hand, the full armor of someone who'd learned that peace negotiations often preceded betrayal. Nyla wanted to come. He refused. This isn't your world yet, he said. You're learning, but you're not ready to sit at tables where people smile while planning murders. When will I be ready? Maybe never. I hope never. But I thought I was your partner. You are, which is why I need you here. Safe. Because if this goes wrong, Kwon has instructions to get you out of Korea, back to Chicago, with enough money to start over. I'm not leaving you. You will if I'm dead. Promise me. If I don't come back from this meeting, you let Kwon get you out. You don't try to avenge me. You don't stay in Seoul trying to fight a war you can't win. You just leave. Live. Be the person who escaped before this world destroyed you. Nyla looked at him, saw the certainty in his face, the acceptance that this might be the last conversation they ever had. Come back to me, she said. Whatever it takes. Lie. Negotiate. Kill him if you have to. But come back. I'll try. He kissed her like he was memorizing the taste of her mouth. Then he left with Kwon and 4 armed guards who looked ready for war, disguised as diplomacy. The restaurant was expensive, quiet. The kind of place where wealthy people conducted business over 8-course meals and wine that cost more than most people made in a month. Kim Jae-won was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 bodyguards positioned strategically. His left arm was in a sling from the warehouse injury. His face carried the particular coldness of someone who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose but pride. Dojin sat across from him. Kwon remained standing. The bodyguards eyed each other with professional assessment of threat levels. You look terrible, Kim Jae-won said. You look worse. Fair. He gestured to the menu. Order something. This is supposed to be civilized. I'm not hungry. Neither am I. But appearances matter. So we'll order food and pretend we're reasonable men, having a reasonable conversation about ending a war that's destroying both our organizations. They ordered expensive dishes neither would eat, wine neither would drink. The rituals of negotiation performed because refusing them signaled weakness. When the waiter left, Kim Jae-won leaned back in his chair. You cost me everything. Half my operation is gone. My best soldiers are dead or arrested. My political connections are running scared. My father's legacy is in ruins because I tried to avenge my brother's death. You cost me the same. Law enforcement is investigating everything connected to Kang Enterprises. My legitimate businesses are suffering because prosecutors are looking for connections to organized crime. And I nearly died trying to save a woman you kidnapped and used as bait. So we're both bleeding. The question is whether we keep bleeding until there's nothing left or whether we stop. What are you proposing? Kim Jae-won pulled out a document, slid it across the table. A treaty, territory division, non-aggression pact. You stay out of my remaining operations. I stay out of yours. We both rebuild what we've lost without interference. Dojin read the document carefully. It was surprisingly fair. Neither side got everything. Both sides kept enough to survive. The kind of compromise that only happened when continuing the fight meant mutual destruction.
And the woman? Dojin asked. Nyla stays off limits? She was never the target. She was leverage. Now she's meaningless to me. Keep her. Marry her. I don't care. Just stay in your territory and let me rebuild mine. That's not how this works. You don't kidnap someone I love and then walk away because it's convenient.
What do you want? My head? Fine. Kill me right here. Start a shootout in a public restaurant that will bring law enforcement down on both of us. See how that works out for the Kang Empire. Dojin stared at him across the table, saw exhaustion, saw defeat poorly disguised as negotiation, saw a man who'd started a war for revenge and lost everything trying to win it. He thought about Nyla's voice asking him not to become the monster everyone feared. Thought about the cycle of violence that had consumed his entire life. Thought about Park Soo-jin and every other person who died because men like him chose revenge over restraint.
I accept your terms, Dojin said quietly. With one addition, you leave Seoul, permanently. Rebuild somewhere else. Because I can't share this city with someone who threatened the person I love. You can have territory elsewhere. You can keep your operations, but not here. Not where I have to see your face and remember what you did. Kim Jae-won studied him carefully. That's exile. That's mercy. Take it, or we finish this. A long silence. The bodyguards tensed, hands drifted toward weapons. The restaurant continued its oblivious service, while two men decided whether peace was possible. Finally, Kim Jae-won nodded. I accept. Give me 2 months to relocate operations. Then I'm gone. You'll never see me again. 1 month. Done. They didn't shake hands, didn't pretend this was friendship, just two enemies who'd fought to a standstill and were choosing survival over pride. Dojin stood. If I see you in Seoul after 30 days, the treaty is void and the war continues. Understood. He walked out of the restaurant into Seoul's evening air, feeling like he'd aged a decade in one conversation. Kwon appeared at his elbow. That was the right call, Kwon said. Was it? Letting him live after what he did? Killing him would have been easy. Walking away took strength. Your father would have chosen violence. You chose strategy. That's growth. Or weakness disguised as wisdom. Sometimes they're the same thing. They drove back to the safe house in silence. Dojin watched Seoul pass outside the window and wondered if peace ever actually felt like victory or if it always tasted like compromise. Nyla was waiting on the porch when they arrived. She saw Dojin get out of the car alive and whole, and her entire body relaxed. She'd spent 6 hours convinced he wasn't coming back, convinced she'd lose him the same way she'd almost lost him in the warehouse. He climbed the steps slowly, shoulders still bothering him, exhaustion carved into every line of his face, but alive, still breathing, still hers. It's over? She asked. For now. Kim Jae-won agreed to leave Seoul. We have a month to make sure he follows through. After that, the Yoon Syndicate becomes someone else's problem. And us? Dojin pulled her close with his good arm. Us is complicated. Law enforcement is circling. My operations are compromised. Everything I've built is unstable. And you're choosing to stay in the middle of it. I am. Why? Because broken things don't scare me. Because I've spent my whole life running from things that felt too hard. Because loving you taught me that safety is overrated and meaning matters more. Because you're trying to be better and I want to see what that looks like. What if better still includes violence? What if I can't ever fully separate myself from what my father built? Then I'll figure out how to love you anyway. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment where you choose something other than what your training demands. Dojin rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve this. Don't deserve you. But I'm too selfish to let you go. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. They stood together while mountains surrounded them, and Seoul existed somewhere in the distance, and the future remained uncertain in all the ways that mattered.
That's it. 6 months later. Morning light spilled through the windows of a small bakery in Samcheong-dong. The neighborhood was quiet, upscale, the kind of area where young professionals drank artisan coffee and elderly couples walked small dogs and tourists came looking for traditional architecture mixed with modern cafes.
The bakery smelled like cinnamon and vanilla and fresh bread. Display cases held pastries arranged with care. Tables by the windows offered views of narrow streets and traditional hanok buildings painted in earth tones. Behind the counter, wearing a simple apron over jeans and a t-shirt, Nyla Carter pulled a tray of croissants from the oven. Her hair was pulled back. Flour dusted her forearms. She looked tired in the particular way of someone who'd been up since 4 a.m. making sure everything was perfect. The door chimed. An elderly woman entered looking for her regular order. Nyla greeted her in Korean that had improved dramatically over the last months. They chatted about the weather, about the neighborhood, about nothing that mattered, while everything that did remained unspoken. After the woman left, Nyla stood by the window and looked out at Seoul moving through another ordinary morning. 6 months ago, she'd been a delivery driver barely surviving in a city that didn't want her. Now she owned a bakery funded by her own business loan despite Dojin offering to buy her an entire chain. Because independence mattered. Because proving she could survive in this world on her own terms mattered. Because love didn't mean possession, and he'd finally learned the difference. The door chimed again. Kang Dojin walked in wearing a tailored suit but looking less like a weapon and more like someone who'd remembered how to be human. He still ran the Kang Empire, still made decisions people feared, still carried darkness that would never fully disappear. But he was trying, every day, in small ways, redirecting operations toward legitimate business, refusing jobs that crossed lines he'd drawn for himself, building something that might eventually look like redemption, even if he'd never fully believe he deserved it. "You're early," Nyla said. "Meeting got canceled. Thought I'd stop by and steal whatever didn't sell yesterday." "Everything sold yesterday. You'll have to steal from today's inventory." Acceptable compromise. She handed him a croissant still warm from the oven, watched him eat it while pretending he didn't love pastries, watched him look at her like she'd saved his life by teaching him how to want things that weren't wrapped in violence. "How's the empire?" she asked. "Complicated. Always complicated. But manageable. Kwan's handling most operational decisions. I'm focusing on legitimate expansion, trying to become the businessman my father pretended to be." "Is it working?" "Slowly. Turns out decades of building an empire on fear don't transition smoothly into respectability. But I'm learning, making mistakes, figuring out who I am when I'm not just the Ice King." "And who's that?" Dojin smiled, small and genuine. "I'm still figuring it out. But whoever he is, he's someone who stops by this bakery every morning to steal pastries from the woman he loves." "That's pretty specific." "I'm very focused." The door chimed again. Early morning customers filtering in, office workers grabbing breakfast before their commutes, students buying cheap coffee and expensive bread, regular people living regular lives completely unaware that the man in the expensive suit had nearly died 6 months ago in a war most of Seoul didn't know existed. Nyla served customers while Dojin sat at a corner table with his laptop, working through emails and contracts, looking like any other businessman conducting morning affairs before heading to the office. No guards visible, no weapons on display, just a man trying to be normal in a life that would never fully allow it. When the morning rush finally slowed, Nyla joined him with 2 coffees, sat across from him at the small table. Their knees touched beneath the surface. His hand found hers automatically. "Detective Park came by yesterday," she said quietly. Dojin's expression shifted. What did he want? "To tell me his investigation is closing. Not enough evidence to prosecute anyone for the warehouse. Too many dead ends. Too many witnesses who suddenly can't remember details. He knows what happened, knows who was responsible. But he can't prove it." "Did he threaten you?" "No, he just looked tired. Said his sister's case would stay cold. Said men like you always win because the system is designed to protect power. Then he left. I don't think he'll be back." "I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. I'm sorry his sister died. I'm sorry you were the one who gave that order.
I'm sorry we live in a world where those kinds of choices feel necessary, but I'm not sorry I stayed. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human. We all choose which sins we can live with. They sat in comfortable silence while the bakery filled with the sounds of normal life. Music playing softly from overhead speakers, espresso machine hissing, customers chatting at their tables, the mundane beauty of ordinary existence. Do you regret it? Dojin asked eventually. Giving up the life you had? Becoming part of my world? Nyla considered the question, thought about the delivery driver who'd walked into Kang Enterprises 8 months ago with no idea how completely her life was about to change. Thought about every choice since then, every moment of fear, every compromise, every morning she woke up loving someone who'd done unforgivable things. I regret that the world works this way, she said finally. I regret that loving you means accepting things I spent my whole life believing were wrong. I regret that Park Soo-jin died and nothing can change that. But do I regret staying? No, because you're trying to be better, and watching someone fight against what they were built to be, that matters to me more than moral purity. Even though I'll never be clean, nobody's clean. We just pretend we are when our sins are harder to see. You kill people. But the world kills people every day through systems we all participate in. At least you're honest about being broken. That's a low bar for a relationship. Yeah, but it's ours. Dojin lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. Thank you. For staying. For believing I could be something other than what my father made me. For teaching me what love actually looks like. You're welcome. Now finish your coffee. You have a meeting in an hour and you're going to be late. Let them wait. I'm stealing another croissant first. She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound filled the small bakery with something that felt like hope disguised as normal life. That evening, after the bakery closed and the neighborhood settled into quiet darkness, Nyla and Dojin walked along the Han River. The same river where they'd had their second date, where she'd told him he looked like someone who'd been alone too long, where he'd started to believe maybe love wasn't just a weapon used against him. Soul sparkled across the water, millions of lights reflecting off dark surface, a city that contained multitudes, crime and beauty, violence and art, people trying to survive and people trying to matter. The whole messy human experience compressed into one peninsula trying to figure out its identity. Do you think we made the right choice? Nyla asked. Staying together despite everything? I don't know, but I think we made the only choice we could live with. That has to count for something. What happens when the past catches up? When someone else tries to use me as leverage? When your enemies realize you still have something to lose? Then we handle it. Together. The way we handled Kim Jae-won. The way we'll handle whatever comes next. One crisis at a time until we're too old to care about empires and territories and everything that seemed important when we were young. That sounds exhausting. Love usually is. They stopped at a railing overlooking the river. Dojin pulled a small box from his jacket pocket, set it on the railing between them. Didn't make a dramatic show of it, didn't drop to one knee, just let it exist there while the city moved around them. Nyla looked at the box, looked at him. Are you serious right now? I know the timing is terrible. I know we're still figuring out how to survive together. I know asking you to marry someone like me is potentially the most selfish thing I've ever done. But I love you, and I want to spend whatever life I have left trying to be worthy of that. So, yes, I'm serious. She opened the box. Inside was a ring, not a diamond, not something ostentatious meant to display wealth. Just a simple citrine stone set in gold, the color of sunset, the color of warmth, the color of something that might look like hope if you squinted. Why citrine? She asked. Because you said once that diamonds felt like transactions. Like something people bought because they were expected to. And you've never cared about expectations. So I found something that reminded me of you. Warm and honest and completely its own thing. Nyla looked at the ring, at the man who'd nearly destroyed her life and then rebuilt it into something strange and beautiful and terrifying. At the choice she was about to make that would define everything that came after. If I say yes, I can't change my mind. I can't wake up one day and decide this is too hard. I'm choosing you, all of you, the monster and the man, the violence and the vulnerability, everything. I know. And you're choosing me. The stubborn foreigner who doesn't fit in your world, who'll question your decisions, who'll make you uncomfortable, who'll never let you forget that you're supposed to be better than what your father built. I'm counting on it. She slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Like he'd measured her hand while she slept. Like he'd been planning this for months. Like he'd known all along that despite everything logical and smart and reasonable, they'd end up here by the river making promises neither of them was entirely sure they could keep. "Yes," she said, "I'll marry you, and probably regret it, and definitely fight with you, and absolutely make your life more complicated than it needs to be. But yes." He kissed her like she'd just given him something he'd stopped believing existed, like redemption tasted like cheap coffee and flour dust and a woman brave enough to love someone broken. Around them, Seoul continued its indifferent existence. People jogged past, couples took selfies, street vendors sold fish-shaped pastries, and no one noticed that two people from incompatible worlds had just decided to build something impossible together. Boshu. 3 months later, they got married in a small ceremony at the bakery. No press, no society photographers. Just Kwan and a handful of people who knew exactly what they were witnessing and chose to support it anyway. Nyla's mother flew in from Chicago, spent the first 2 days interrogating Dojin about his intentions and his past, and whether he understood that if he hurt her daughter, there were consequences that didn't involve police. "I understand," he'd said quietly, "and I know I don't deserve her, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy." "You better," her mother had replied, "because she's choosing you over safety, over comfort, over everything I wanted for her, so you make damn sure that choice isn't wasted." The ceremony was simple. No elaborate vows, no religious elements, just two people standing in a bakery that smelled like bread and belonging, promising to figure out survival together. Afterward, they didn't take a honeymoon, didn't disappear to some tropical island, just went back to work. Back to the bakery and the empire and the messy reality of building a life in the spaces between legitimate and illegal. Dojin still ran the Kang organization, still made decisions that involved violence, still carried darkness that would never fully wash clean. But he did it differently now, with someone beside him who reminded him that choices mattered, that people weren't just assets, that the goal was becoming better even if they never achieved good. Nyla ran her bakery, expanded slowly, hired staff who needed second chances, became part of the neighborhood in ways that felt earned rather than bought. And every morning, before the sun came up, she made bread and pastries and coffee while the man she'd married worked beside her, stealing croissants and pretending he didn't love the domesticity of it all. They fought, often, about decisions he made, about risks she took, about the fundamental question of whether loving someone who'd killed innocent people was different from forgiving it. They never fully resolved those arguments, just learned to carry the weight of them together. And some mornings, when Seoul was still dark and the bakery smelled like vanilla and possibility, Nyla would look at Kang Dojin standing behind the counter with flour on his expensive suit, and she'd remember the terrified delivery driver who'd walked into Kang Enterprises demanding proper identification. She'd remember every choice that led here, every moment of fear, every compromise. Every morning she woke up choosing love over logic. And she'd think, this is what survival looks like. Not perfect, not clean, not anything her younger self would have imagined. Just two broken people building something real in a city that tried to destroy them. Just warmth and bread and the particular kind of peace that only exists when you stop pretending you're not flawed. Just love. Messy and complicated and absolutely worth the cost. The bakery door would chime, early customers arriving, office workers and students and elderly neighbors who knew exactly who Dojin was, and chose to come anyway because Nyla's pastries were that good, and sometimes choosing community meant accepting complications. And Nyla Carter, former delivery driver, current bakery owner, wife to Seoul's most dangerous reformed criminal, would serve coffee and smile and know with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not because it was easy, but because it was hers. And that made all the difference.